This is another.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Am I working? Is she working? Let me make sure this is turned on. Yeah. Okay. My headset's on. Welcome to. I'm late. Yeah. I thought we could watch the last of this video that we got through two of, which I'm proud of, which I assume we'll only barely get through this one of that autistic researcher who has their model for conflict resolution. Is this the right one?
My autism and friendship trauma series. This is not going to include the demonstration of the autistic to non-autistic friendship
Where's the
termination.
volume at?
I know people are waiting on that video.
Why
I
are you
really
so
want to get it up
quiet?
tomorrow. I just realized I need to add further context as to what's going on.
This is really
So
quiet
I'm
for
going to
me.
continue
What the
talking
fuck?
about autism and friendship trauma, this time by discussing the way our processing and communication
Shit.
styles create opposing methods of conflict
Am I
resolution.
crazy?
For the time being, we're going to
It's so
disregard
quiet.
all possible confounding variables.
Okay, so let me share my screen and see if this be working, because like I'm kind of confused now. What?
This is
Oh
another
yeah.
video in my autism and friendship trauma series. This is not going
Hold
to
up, let me
include the
share my
demonstration of the
screen.
autistic to non-autistic friendship termination. I know people are
It's
waiting on
so
that video. I
quiet
really
in my
want to get it up
headset. I don't know
tomorrow.
why.
I just realized I need to add further context as to what's going on. So I'm going to continue talking about autism and friendship trauma, this time by discussing the way our processing and communication styles create opposing methods of conflict.
Okay, so this is the last one, I think, right? Hold on.
I'm going to talk about autism and friendship trauma. I do have.
No, we already did that one. Where is the last one? I feel like there was like a whole. Wait, 1 second. I'm just gonna have to. 1 sec. Okay, wait.
Honestly, the only thing that really helped me.
I wonder why my headset's so fucked up. 1 sec. Do I have to turn this on? Sorry, y'all. This is like technical difficulties maxed out right now. So open link in new tab. I'm just gonna try to find the okay. We did that one. Okay, here's the last one.
Okay, now that we understand the difference
Got
between
it.
autistic and allistic communication, processing, and
Okay, so she says now that we understand the difference. Okay, and then I disagree with some of the framing, but this is nothing new. Okay, so let's go through this real quick, and then we'll come up with an actual topic for the day. Currently, the topic is non-existent. Okay, so here we go.
conflict resolution styles, we can better understand a demonstration of what's going on when conflict arises in real time. I'm first going to do a quick recap of what allistic conflict resolution looks like, then autistic, and then I'm going to discuss in detail what's going on when we cross the two. So quick recap.
Oops,
Tab,
sorry.
we have two aulistics who have established a friendship. They're feeling safe and connected with one another. Their nervous systems are regulated. They feel good. But our scuba diver has said something that accidentally hurt the feelings of our aulistic bunny. Now that our bunny's nervous system is dysregulated, they need to create an emotional barrier between them and the source of their distress.
I disagree with that
So our bunny's
framing.
going to change his body language to pull away from the scuba diver. He's going to limit his expressivity and tone, and he's going to stop contributing so much to conversation. Our scuba diver, as another feelings-based processor and feelings-first communicator, is not only going to pick up on the changes in the aulistic bunny, but he's going to accurately interpret the message within them, which is that the bunny is feeling dysregulated and unsafe in the relationship.
I'm going to pause that. I don't think that they necessarily accurately interpret it, but they probably are able to check it by doing other communication back and forth that the other person would understand. So, like, it's not that I don't think it's actually that mind ready, although there's an aspect to it, but I think they're also checking it to increase their confidence that like they're on the same wavelength of information and they're exchanging the same information. So, yeah.
Relationship. So our scuba diver is going to recognize that they're now engaging in a shared negative feeling, and that he's going to need to create a shared positive feeling for the bunny to be regulated enough to engage in negative information exchange. So our scuba diver is going to get closer to our bunny. He's going to soften his tone to signal feelings of safety, connectedness, and concern, and he's going to ask the bunny what's wrong.
I agree and I disagree. So like I would just change this framing to simplify it so that it doesn't get this convoluted and create this false dichotomy that she's relying on, which I don't think is useful because dichotomies have ruined our species' trajectory towards anything that would be, healthy, unfortunately. It has a totalizing effect to use dichotomies. Like it really messes up too many things. Okay, so let me back that up just a tiny bit for context.
And that he's going to need to create a shared positive feeling for the bunny to be regulated enough to engage in negative information exchange.
So I would say that he's going to have to assure the other person that they are safe and that they're invested in their safety. So then if they're invested in the person's safety, any information from there already is like situated in the context of like, I am telling you this because I care about your well-being, and this is no longer negative information per se. It's necessary information that could be disturbing but is being said for the safety and benefit of the other person. Basically they're saying like they're invested in the well-being of the other person. And I think that autistic people are also equally able to be invested in the well-being of another person. We just aren't exchanging the right kind of information. That's the problem. Not this like leading with feelings or leading with facts. That's not it. I just think that's unhelpful. It creates this weird thing where we do things backwards, and I don't know. Yeah.
So our scuba diver is going to get closer to our bunny. He's going to soften his tone to signal feelings of safety, connectedness, and concern, and he's going to ask the bunny what's wrong. If our bunny denies that anything is wrong, our scuba diver is going to understand that the bunny needs more help in regulating their nervous system before they're going to be able to tolerate negative information exchange. Once the two feel safe and regulated enough to engage in negative information exchange, they'll discuss the conflict and be able to resolve it. So they're sharing their feelings first and then discussing them, which resolves the conflict and strengthens the relationship. Now we have a pair of autistic friends who feel safe and secure about the relationship. Our autistic cat says something that accidentally hurts the feelings of our autistic artist, and now our autistic artist's nervous system is dysregulated, meaning he needs to create emotional distance between him and the source of his dysregulation, his friend, the autistic cat. As information-based processors and information-first communicators, he's going to establish emotional distance by decreasing feeling exchange and increasing information exchange. And our autistic artist is going to do this by pausing shared feeling and engaging in open dialogue. Our autistic artist is going to
Pause this. I disagree with this so much.
Explicitly, hey, something is wrong and we need to discuss it.
No.
As another information-based.
Okay, I just disagree with this framing so hard. So I would say that an autistic person, we have alexithymia, right? Which is supposed to be what? I think it's that the experiences that we're having are not matching the language that people use for happy, sad, etc. Okay, so because we have so many differences in how we process information and regulate according to what we're able to process and how, that we just like have a really different experience. So then if I talk about what I am feeling, first of all, now I'm stuck in alexithymia, like lack of language land, but also I historically have not had people understand what the hell I am talking about. So that's not going to be a good place to start from to resolve any sort of problem. Like I need to be like, well, here's what's going on as factually as possible, because that's the part that I'm able to communicate to another person without it being a new problem, like where the person's confused why or what I'm saying. I'm like, or, imposing interpretations of my behavior that are wrong. So to get away from that, I'm going to speak factually. Like, I completely disagree as to why or what this strategy is, even though I think this person is observing the same strategy or the same phenomenon that I would be. I just have a completely different model as to what's going on. And I think that her model, I'm going to argue, in general, is just not helpful and is going to exacerbate lots of problems that autistic people are having, but just like the world in general right now, it doesn't get to the root of why other things are not. This doesn't serve people, is what I'm saying. Like, she's kind of saying like these are equally good methods of communication, where I'm saying this entire framework is wrong, and we don't have a model of communication that helps anybody. Like, this what has evolved naturally is actually very fraught, and it's actually not what we should be doing. It's a invention that needs to be redid entirely.
Processor and information first communicator, our cat is going to understand that he also needs to pause his feeling exchange and engage in open dialogue to help our autistic artist re-regulate their nervous system enough to re-engage in shared feeling.
I disagree so entirely with this. Like, I just think we need to be clear on what information we can see. We can't see the kinds of information that people without autism are exchanging, because it's this social, global, configurational, and we're just not. It's not going to get us anywhere to pretend that we can do a thing we can't do when we're like running into things. Like, instead of pretending that we're not blind, there's no sense in doing it when we're already injured and falling on the floor. Like, it's why.
The two are going to discuss the conflict until they come to a shared understanding and the artist feels safe and secure enough within the relationship to engage in shared feeling. By the time the artist has gotten to the point where he's discussing the extent of the pain the cat has caused him, his nervous system should be regulated enough to be engaging in full feeling exchange, allowing the cat to understand exactly what our artist is feeling, the same way the aulistics do at the beginning of their conflict. So we're creating mutual understanding until our nervous systems are regulated enough to engage in shared feeling. If the cat notices the conflict first and decides to bring it up with the artist, and the artist denies that there's a problem, this is because the artist has not figured out how to appropriately express what's gone on, therefore they can't create shared understanding and would not be able to regulate enough to engage in conflict resolution. The cat, as another information-based processor, will understand this, and since they've done their duty of trying to resolve the conflict first, it is now the artist's responsibility to bring the conflict up if and when they're ready. Okay, now that we understand the difference between autistic and
I'm going to see if I can speed this up 1 second. I think I can.
The cat will inherently understand this. But just like in an autistic relationship, once all of the appropriate steps of conflict resolution have been taken, the conflict can be successfully resolved, strengthening the connection within the relationship and increasing the likelihood of their ability to resolve conflict in the future. And now we can see almost immediately why, when we cross the neurotypes, this becomes a
1 second. Let me see if there was a place I could do speed.
Now that we understand
okay,
the
I'm going
difference
to speed this up because I'm just like, I just
styles,
disagree with this model so much, it's kind of like unreal. Okay.
So we're creating mutual understanding until our nervous systems are regulated enough to engage in shared feeling. If the cat notices the conflict,
I just disagree with this entirely. I just think, okay, so I go back to, like, I think people want to know, where am I? And if you're talking to somebody who uses a sort of information to figure that out that you've never been able to use, that's why it's not gonna feel safe. It's much more literal than what she's talking about, like this sort of like abstract way of negotiating an abstract feeling of safety, when I think it's much more like we have a visual spatial processing disability. There's kinds of information we've never been able to use, and working with people who don't recognize that is obviously going to be a problem when we're particularly lost and have been hurt in some way, where it feels like we're under threat, we need to recover and we can't, people can't see that we're hurt, people don't care that we're hurt. Like, all of these are major issues for us because the strategies that we have to navigate the world are different, because it's a visual spatial disability that gets into social communication, because social communication is visual spatial skills. is what I was my argument. Okay, all right, okay, I'm just gonna get
and
this.
decides to bring it up with the artist, and the artist denies that there's a problem. This is because the artist has not figured out how to appropriately express what's gone on, therefore they can't create shared understanding and would not be able to regulate enough to engage in conflict resolution. The cat, as another information-based processor, will understand this, and since they've done their duty of trying to resolve the conflict first, it is now the artist's responsibility to bring the conflict up if and when they're ready. If the artist does not bring the conflict up, it's because he decided it's inconsequential to the relationship or is unrelated to anything the cat did, and therefore the conflict is not the cat's problem. The cat will inherently understand this. But just like in an autistic relationship, once all of the appropriate steps of conflict resolution have been taken, the conflict can be successfully resolved, strengthening the connection within the relationship and increasing the likelihood of their ability to resolve conflict in the future. And now we can see almost immediately why, when we cross the neurotypes, this becomes a problem. So let's say our autistic cat and our autistic bunny are in a friendship together. They're feeling safe, secure, regulated, and connected. Let's say our autistic cat says something that accidentally hurts the feelings of our autistic bunny. As a feelings-based processor and feelings-first communicator, our autistic bunny is going to communicate that he's feeling dysregulated, disconnected, and insecure about the state of the relationship through feeling. He's also going to expect his partner to be able to accurately interpret the message within the shared feeling without further explanation, because it should be understood that trying to engage in negative information exchange will further dysregulate the bunny, which isn't fair to do without first helping the bunny re-regulate his nervous system by engaging in a shared positive feeling. However, our autistic cat is not a feelings-based processor and is not a feelings-based communicator. Our cat is not going to understand the feelings-based message being sent by our autistic bunny without first receiving the context of the information regarding the state of the feeling. So our cat needs the context of the information to interpret the feeling and is going to ask the bunny to please provide that context. As an information-based communicator and information-first processor who creates shared understanding and regulates their nervous system through direct information exchange, our autistic cat is not going to understand that our autistic bunny needs help in regulating their nervous system by creating shared understanding through a shared feeling. And this adds to the conflict for a couple of reasons. So our bunny is experiencing the original wound of the original conflict, plus the additional wound of the cat not helping in emotional regulation by engaging in shared feeling, plus the additional wound of the cat trying to jump right into direct negative information exchange without first establishing shared feeling and helping the bunny regulate his nervous system. So now we have 3 conflicts instead of just 1. Because of these 3 additional conflicts, our autistic is going to assume when our bunny initiated the conflict, they were not willing to help our bunny re-regulate their nervous system, and they directly asked what was going on, bypassing the responsibility to help the bunny regulate their nervous system, which tells the bunny that they intend.
This assumes way too much. So if it was really this complicated, then conflicts would not be, like, they would be much more chaotic than this. This is way too many variables. I don't think this model is accurate. It, like, conflict or like issues with human interactions are pretty regular, like as a pattern. Like, they don't have a lot of like irregularity to it. So the way that this is so convoluted that it's in and of itself very improbable as a description of behavior, because, like, okay, how does a 7-year-old do this? How does a 5-year-old do this? How does a person, you know, with limited cognitive capacities do this? This just doesn't track for me. Okay, okay, there's 3 minutes left. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I didn't know. Like, are we interrupting when we have stuff to say, or are we waiting till the end?
I'm going to try to wait till the end, but it's driving me crazy. If you'd like to interrupt now, you can.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We can, like, address this later, but yeah, it's like she's talking about as if people have this order that they expect that the other person who's, like, probably also feeling some kind of way is going to regulate that their nervous system and be like, we're good, but I'm feeling hurt, which, like, I do sometimes see people do that, but it's definitely not all the time. Like, sometimes we want to prioritize, like, conveying that we're hurt, and we can, like, clarify that we're good later. And I don't know if it's, like, this one size fits all, like, regardless of neurotype.
I agree. And also, it's like, it's confusing to me how this model emerged. Like, I'm not sure what her starting point was. I would want to know that at this point, because it's like, God, this is so specific, and I would want her to argue for it, like, how this follows from what? Like, this model follows from what about the brain, what that's generalizable, because she's implying this is happening, I guess, in every conflict. And I'm saying, well, I have a way simpler explanation, which is much more universal and doesn't require this convoluted relationship between, like, the different, like, aspects of this sequence that she's describing, but also this idea that it can run backwards in autistic people. Like, that's a lot. So I'd want to know, like, where did she start off with to end up here? Because it seems like maybe she's taken for granted, like, her training and what she was exposed to in school to be like, this is her innovation on it. I don't know. I don't get where this is coming from, and it's said with, like, a lot of certainty, even though it's not. I don't like, okay, so if this is what's happening, why, right? Like, I don't get the why of this on, like, it has to be such a universal thing that, like, almost all human brains can do this. So I'm like, okay, well, then what's that? What's the universal thing? What causes this? Because this gets to, this gets too woo-woo for me, where I'm like, okay, well, where's the material condition that this is emerging from that's simpler? Because this is super complicated. And yeah, if it gets any more complicated than this, it's like makes it less likely that this is how anything works, because like what? I can't see, like, if something's already complicated, it's like anything that changes is going to make it exponentially more complicated. And I like, this is already way more complex than what I see people doing.
I do have a theory on like what she might be talking about by the autistic needing the other person to regulate them before they can get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe that could be, you know, like asking if now's a good time, like seeing if the other person has bandwidth. Like, I don't think it's fair for anyone to expect someone else to regulate them in a mutual conflict situation. Like, I've seen people with that expectation, and that's very entitled. It's like the other person's not allowed to have their own feelings. They just gotta like be putting all their energy toward
Yeah, exactly. And the regulation, I'm also confused about, like, does she think people, like, what does she think people have a word for this dysregulation, or what do people experience the dysregulation as? Because she's claiming that, okay, the person needs to be regulated. That's fine by me. Like, I can understand, like, somebody being dysregulated. We kind of have a concept of that. So then what does an holistic person think dysregulation is, since we've had to understand dysregulation from neurodevelopmental psychology as autistics to try to make sense of our behavior? Because otherwise people say we're crazy. So then if what we're doing is crazy, what do holistic people under this model think that their own dysregulation is? Like, what is, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm kind of confused about that.
So they would think it is, I don't have the right words right now, but like other people doing behavior to them that is wrong and causing them to feel bad in a way that normally people don't cause them to feel.
Right.
And they would have it all in feelings and like you're not behaving correctly. Like,
Interesting. Not behaving correctly. Right. And then see, this is where with that, then my explanation works a lot more seamlessly and covers more ground, because I'd be saying, well, they think you're not giving the correct information or helping them correctly because they normally know where they are based on global configurational information. And that's what they're looking for, is global configurational information. Yeah.
Because basically they're saying you're socially blind. You're not acting in the way I expect someone with this relationship to act.
Right. Which
so your model suddenly becomes extremely simple of this complicated explanation this person is given.
Right. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Let's try to finish. There's 3 minutes ish.
Intentionally hurt them, intentionally are skipping the shared feeling exchange, and are intentionally denying them nervous system regulation. System, which tells the bunny that they intentionally hurt them, intentionally or bunny re-regulate their nervous system, and they directly asked what was going on, bypassing the responsibility to help the bunny regulate their nervous system, which tells the bunny that they intentionally hurt them, intentionally are skipping the shared feeling exchange, and are intentionally denying them nervous system regulation.
Okay, go for it.
So she's bringing this language of intentionally hurt them, and so this again comes back to the metaphor of blindness, right? Is that if somebody punches you, you're like, oh, yeah, you give me 1 second. If somebody punches you, you assume they did it on purpose, right? And so if you are doing something that is emotion or like regulatory imbalancing, that is like damage to a person, that they assume has to be done on purpose because they are aware of these things using their set of skills that they're able to have because they're not blind to that entire aspect.
Right. And we're operating and moving in the dimension that they see these pieces of information, that social information, hierarchical, whatever, global configurational metaphored into like social skills, right? So they move around and use that stuff. We also exist in that dimension. They see us as part of that, the same way that you see a blind person moving around in a visual environment, even though they don't. So that's the actual conflict, in my opinion, and why this doesn't help and doesn't make it any clearer or easier to talk to the person, because it also kind of like projects onto autistic people, because of the system that we live in, a misogynistic thing about them being emotional and us being logical. And this is doing kind of like what Christians who are like complementarians do, where you say, oh, well, we just do it first and then you do it second. So see, feelings and logic are equal, feelings and information are equal, even though this whole dichotomy, I would say, is a fiction. And while the results of believing it aren't fictions, like it causes real situations and a real change to our brains, but it's not prescriptive. It doesn't create the change it says it does, because it's not true. It's a fiction. And then, so if I believe that I'm I don't know, Elvis reincarnated, that's going to change how I behave, but that doesn't make me Elvis reincarnated. It just isn't. So I think there's a problem there, and it's also, I think it's a bad coping mechanism for autistic people to be like, well, actually, though, even though when we get dysregulated, we might hyperventilate and sob, which you guys see as childish, we're actually super, super mature, because look at how logic we are. Like, this is not a good coping mechanism for us. It's not gonna make things better. But I see elements of that which I'm concerned about. Okay, I will keep going. Let me back up a little bit for the sentence kind of going all the way through.
Regulate their nervous system, and they directly asked what was going on, bypassing the responsibility to help the bunny regulate their nervous system, which tells the bunny that they intentionally hurt them, intentionally are skipping the shared feeling exchange, and are intentionally denying them nervous system regulation, all of which wounds the autistic further. So our autistic bunny is feeling very dysregulated and very unsafe, and is definitely not feeling ready to talk about what's going on. Likely they will not feel comfortable discussing this conflict with the autistic, because they believe the autistic intended for the conflict to happen, causing the conflict to go unresolved, weakening the relationship, increasing the chance of future conflict, and decreasing the likelihood of the two being able to successfully resolve the conflict. What makes this more difficult is the autistic does not recognize that there was conflict to begin with, because the autistic successfully completed the autistic definition of conflict resolution, which was the autistic picked up on the autistic's dysregulation, asked about it, and the autistic said everything was fine or didn't want to engage in information exchange. So the autistic was never given enough information to come to the conclusion that their autistic friend was upset with them specifically. By autistic conflict resolution rules, our autistic cat has done everything that he is responsible of doing, and it is now the autistic's responsibility to either bring up this conflict in the future for them to resolve when he's ready, or the conflict will not come up because the conflict was either inconsequential or not about the cat. So the autistic half of the relationship does not feel impacted by this conflict. The autistic half of the relationship feels very heavily impacted by this conflict. Now, if we reverse it and say that the autistic bunny accidentally hurt the feelings of the autistic cat is going to use autistic methods of conflict resolution and bring up the conflict directly. Now, the autistic may interpret autistic conflict resolution strategies as a bit hostile at first, because we're not engaging in shared feeling at the very beginning. However, as another person who's speaking the same language, we're able to engage in a dialogue and then build the emotional connection over time, which helps the autistic in autistic conflict resolution. And while this isn't always received well enough to resolve the conflict from the autistic person's perspective, the autistic half of the relationship is going to have a higher chance of having their conflict resolved than the autistic half of the relationship. Meaning the relationship is going to be more negative in the autistic perspective than the autistic. And if conflict happens enough and negative attitudes from the autistic become high enough, they will no longer be able to tolerate the nervous system dysregulation caused by remaining in a relationship with this person. The autistic half of the relationship is going to feel blindsided by this termination, because the autistic never felt safe enough to actually tell the autistic that there was a problem. So the autistic was never made aware that there were problems to begin with, so they won't be able to identify a cause for their friend terminating the relationship. The autistic is also not going to have enough information then to conclude why the autistic feels so hostile toward them. So from the autistic perspective, the relationship went from happy and healthy to sudden one-sided hostility, while the autistic perceives the relationship as having
It's almost done, but there's like 30 seconds. Actually, you know what? Let me get through. I'll finish it and then I'll say.
started as a healthy relationship, but became unhealthy and hurtful slowly over time. So they then to conclude why the autistic feels so hostile toward them. So from the autistic perspective, the relationship went from happy and healthy to sudden one-sided hostility, while the autistic perceives the relationship as having started as a healthy relationship, but became unhealthy and hurtful slowly over time. So the autistic nervous system is able to process the termination of the friendship over time, while the autistic nervous system is overloaded with large, unexplainable emotions. Without understanding, the feeling can't be processed and instead gets stuck in the body. So we ruminate, thinking about the relationship over and over again, trying to pinpoint why exactly our friend turned on us, staying stuck until someone helps to unstick us.
So much I disagree with in the last part as well, but that's just because I have a different model. It's not because like, oh, this person is messing up. I just have a completely different model.
By this termination because
okay, so blindsided by the termination. So the autistic person is exchanging the information they can see, right? And that information is not important to the autistic person. Usually, it can't. Oh, hi, people in chat. It usually like. I'm trying to think about how to put this. At no time in an autistic person's life have they had to understand any dynamic without global configurational reasoning. So they genuinely believe everyone can use that, everyone is using that, and that autistic people have been using it the whole time. And so they get upset with autistic people because we've been doing things that they've interpreted as, well, that has to be a global configurational signal, because people just do not give global configurational signals. That's not a thing, right? Similar to if we had a world where blindness and congenital blindness did not conceptually exist and nobody realized that was possible. So you would think, well, that person moves really weird, but they must have seen that one. There's no way that somebody could never see anything. Crazy, right? So they really are attributing agency that you can't have over time. And then the autistic person just like probably has an inkling that they're missing information, and this is why I don't like this model, is it kind of gets away from what could be a really useful insight that we've developed through our own self-awareness that I think needs to be reinforced with a better model. But the holistic person has been giving us signs that something's wrong, but we can't ask what's wrong in the global configurational language, so we never get to find out what's wrong, if we even notice at all, which we might not, because all of this is in global configurational. And my explanation is just way more elegant and therefore way more likely, because this is covering so much ground of human behavior that it can't be as convoluted as what she's describing.
Yeah, and also just again, if you go into that example of the world where the idea of being blind doesn't exist, you could have a relationship end that the blind person is blindsided by, but the other person is like, I literally packed all of my things in front of you. How did you not know I was about to leave?
Right? Exactly.
The exact same way that autistic people are putting out to them not just obvious signals, but undeniably obvious signals, right? That every other human they've ever met has been able to pick up on. Even the most socially obnoxious ones would pick up on it at some point, as long as they aren't autistic, as long as they aren't blind in this respect.
Yes. Exactly.
And I think a thing that's really important about this framework of looking at things is that it feels more hopeful to me somehow, rather than saying like we are alien creatures that do everything backwards and are like sort of innately compatible, to instead say like we have a disability that other people don't know about and aren't yet able to conceptualize. But once those tools exist for them to conceptualize and to know how to then act differently around us, then they will do that. And
yes.
do that.
Yes. Yes. And it's not that hard.
But nobody intentionally does cruel shit to blind people. Like 1% or less, like actively antisocial people.
Yes.
Are cruel to blind people.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
In the same way, people would have to be actively antisocial, and that would hurt anyone, not just us, to intentionally fuck us over in a future where this stuff is developed.
Right. Right. Exactly. And then the conversation also becomes a lot simpler around like why it's a disability, and then that disability becomes easy for people to understand, because like I take sight for granted, and that's fine. And I had to be told as a child that some people can't see. I don't remember how early I was told that, but there was definitely a time in my life where I had no idea that that was not a thing for some people. I could conceive, because eyeballs are physical, that like things we can see, we know that the eyeball, as a kid you can understand my eyeballs are doing the seeing, right? So you can understand that your eyeballs could be destroyed. But it is very difficult for someone to understand what's happening inside of a brain and to visualize a brain being destroyed. I would argue this is why, like, I really don't like the trigger warning thing, but like suicide or like shooting people in the head basically isn't as terrifying as it ought to be. And like, while, like, for example, there's not a lot of video games where you stab people in the eyeball. we don't have this relationship to the brain as a sense organ and processing organ that we do to eyeballs. So this whole dynamic is kind of at the mercy of that distinction, which really isn't that big of a distinction after all. It's just a difficult distinction for us to make, but the material reality of it is that the distinction isn't even really it's the difference isn't large between this and blindness, because I also think that it's functionally related, besides for a good metaphor. So if I can just get pivoting over to this metaphor, they already have experience understanding. Everyone already has experience understanding, like their ability to do something with a sense organ that's developed normally and has not had any injuries to it, versus somebody that didn't have that. They can understand that dynamic, that relationship, that phenomenon, and that's what we actually have, and they need to know that.
Right, and like the understanding of autism that already exists is already enmeshed in not understanding social cues. And so it's very easy to say, oh, they're picking up on the thing where we're not able to pick up social skills the way everyone else can, right?
Right.
Like it's a much smaller change in the understanding than this convoluted theory that this person.
Exactly. And like most people could understand this.
Even the idea of being emotions-based versus information-based, like that's not how we understand brains work.
Right.
Like there isn't this magical divide between emotions and information. Emotions are information.
Yes. Like, yeah, the other main problem with this theory that she's developed is that it's based on science that's been outdated for pretty much as long as she's been alive. So not awesome. Hey, now that we got through that, any suggestions for a topic for today?
Could the topic be learning what Jane has been up to since she got married?
Sure, let's do that. So, great question. I have been trying to figure out my work aspect of life, because money needs to exist. Getting a little frustrated at that on a structural level again, as you do. And I have been processing certain aspects of my disability. I came up with something called NODE, which I talked a little bit about on a previous stream, I believe. New thing, old thing, all things do things, which is a description of the motivational process of doing as building rather than doing as arriving. So doing as arriving is basically look over there, I want to go over there, make sure everybody wants me to go over there, go over there. Like, or if people don't want me to go over there and I'm a contrarian, how do I get over there anyway? So you're like, you look out, go to thing. Okay, great. There's your motivation. And your motivation is enhanced by getting closer to the thing and remembering that you used to be further away from the thing, and then thinking about how much further you have to go, and that's pretty much it. We don't get that, so instead what we do is we learn a new thing, see a new piece of information that's literally around us right now. See, hear, whatever, perceive. Then we go into our memories, including imagination, because memory and imagination I think are actually basically the same thing, with slightly different directions of like, how do I say this? Well, let me put it this way. So there's like old information, and then there's like counterfactual old information, like things you've already imagined and whatever. So you have stored information, some things that occurred that are episodic, some things that are imagined that are counterfactuals and hypotheticals, etc. Okay, so new thing, old thing, all things. And that's when the new thing and the old thing now become part of a like condensed, defragged, compressed pattern. You've updated your pattern, right? So this is some sort of integration. And once you've had the integration of information, this now makes you do things. You don't have to worry about it. It will automatically happen in the same way that somebody looks out, sees the thing they want, and goes to it. So motivation will then be a lot simpler. So that's a thing that I've been thinking about. And so that means, like, what does the autistic person need to do? It's actually really easy.
Could you go through just the list of what the node stands for at like 20% slower talking rate?
Yes. So you can fill in the noun part as you see fit, but the simplest one is new, old, all, do. So node spelled N-O-A-D for fun, but it sounds like node, which is also fun. So yeah, new thing or plural things, old things, all things, do things. And to an extent, somebody who's...
Would it be reasonable to ask you to just explain what they all mean again?
Yes.
Instead of me going back and watching the
video later? Totally. I'll just do it one more time. Yeah. So
okay.
Thank
you. And just want to clarify that kind of thing is reasonable to ask, especially in a space with people with what are they called, neurodevelopmental disorders.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Sure. So new thing is look at, hear, observe your direct environment right now. So where are you right now? What is around you? Look at the things. Something has changed, even if it's just your relationship to the things. So this is the present moment and what is directly surrounding you. Then you go to the old things. So that's everything stored in your memory. It can be episodic as well as like your catalog of definitions, like your everything that the concept, your conceptual library. So old things. And then you think about both of them simultaneously.
I just got something from Douglas Hofstadter for this.
Yes.
You have your episodic memory as well as your episodic trajectory.
Yeah.
Full of things that you have projected to be in the future.
Yeah.
And you have your episodic subjunctory.
Ooh.
Which is full of things about what if this had happened.
Yes.
Or if only this could have happened.
Ooh, can this go in terms in the Discord?
Yeah, so these are, it's in vocabulary right now.
It is, thank you.
And I even pinged you when I posted them.
I'm done.
So these would also be stored within memory, but we call them episodic memory, episodic trajectory, and episodic subjunctory.
Wow, I love this. Thank you, I needed that. Okay, so, yes.
Yes, awesome. As just like I need the things you give to me. I love that, we have a to exchange them like this. You're explaining the old things.
So old things is that.
These different kinds of memory.
Yes, it's episodic memory, trajectory, subjunctory. And then all things is synthesis and integration of the new and the old. And my metaphor for understanding this is that most people are moving through space like they're going through a straw, and the straw has clear resin in it, and events are embedded that happen in this resin. And then they move linearly through this. And they may also project things into the resin that didn't really happen or that they think happened. They can project backwards, forwards. What we need to do is flip the straw and look down, and then look through the resin for the patterns that have emerged with both the things embedded that we're pretty sure happened and the projections as well, if you want to get more tricky with it, and then that metaphor can keep extending. So, but basically what I'm talking about is the compression to be able to see the patterns and the shapes, and that because we then will see recursive aspects to these new things, old things, we will then be motivated to do things, because what we want to know is what is real and how do things work and what can we build and why. And so once we integrate that information, we'll automatically be inspired to do something. Now, it may not be what people want us to do. They may be like, no, go over there, and we'll be like, what? No, huh? But that's how you get an autistic person to do anything. And that the do things isn't is the do things is just more like a chemistry sort of statement, like, you know, hydrogen plus oxygen equals, you know, like it's basically it's a combustion or something like, or a
Right.
yeah.
It's these 3 steps, and then you simply will do things because there will be a change of energy. That's what chemistry is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Change
Yes.
energy
Yes.
happening.
Yes.
In the way that it exists and within space and matter, whatever. Right.
Right. And then this is why we don't do goal-directed behaviors, because we don't put energy towards a goal, and we don't direct energy towards a goal. What happens is we produce energy that we then use to further understand based on the new things, old things, all things.
So, like, yeah, so like talking about goals is weird because I'm like, well, a goal is just whatever thing that you're trying to do.
Right.
And you're trying to do a thing because of reality. It's not because of the goal.
Right.
And in fact, I could create a goal. Someone could give me a goal, but that doesn't mean I do things in relation to it.
Right.
Right? Like that's the whole problem that we have with society and the focus on doing as arriving is that we simply don't have the thing that makes our energy exist and be spent towards goals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter how many goals I have. I can only do things that I already am energized towards doing. Mm-hmm. If I'm not energized towards doing, I need to learn a new thing, see a new thing, or basically cognifacture a new thing, create a different understanding of the world, or frame things differently for myself.
Correct. Exactly. And then the reason why I ended up with this was I was looking for the simplest way to describe something.
Sorry, very quickly. It's just that this, what's extremely important, I think, of this understanding, as I've just put it, is that willpower does not factor into the equation at any point, right? Like we simply do the things that we are, you know, intrinsically motivated to do, not the kind of motivation aulistics will talk about sometimes. And we can do those things and we can't do anything else. And increasing or decreasing willpower doesn't really change that reality,
right?
Except for to the degree that we can sort of force arriving as doing to some percentage based on how functioning we are within society, right?
Yes.
Like you're able to force like 10% of doing as arriving or whatever, and it burns you the fuck out. But you're actually able to do somewhat. And then someone who's less functioning, like myself, I'm less able to force those kinds of things.
Right. And
or it burns me out more or whatever.
Yes, and it feels horrible because if you make us do goal-directed behaviors, that's where we get back to we'll show up at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong stuff. Because that's the disability that makes us have to do the node exclusively as a strategy, independent of going to the right place at the right time with the right stuff. Because I'm like, what place, what time, what is time?
Right. What is time, right, is a thing that I've thought about for hours and hours and hours for years. And like literally the more I think about it, the less sense it makes.
Yeah.
Not just like physics, like physicists can get confused about it. But I just mean like very basic ways.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out that the part where we try to do the thing, one, to even try to do it like an autistic will do it, we spend so much more of our energy and time and resources, and it gives us so much more stress load, basically. That's what burnout's caused by.
Yeah.
Stress, as I understand it, is a real thing that accumulates in your body.
Yes.
But this is all just to make an attempt the same way an autistic would. But on top of that, because of our issues with, spatial, visual understanding of the world, we then have a tiny success rate at the things that we try to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which comes in with like we show up at the wrong time or the wrong place, or we don't have the right things, because understanding what kind of things you should have with you in the first place is visual spatial skilled understanding of the world, being able to
Exactly.
find, notice, and pick up the correct context, to have a theoretical knowledge of what to bring.
Right.
But then it brings in your working spatial, visual, temporal memory. We should probably add temporal in there, actually, shouldn't we? But to then use it and remember it, and we have a much smaller working memory for this as well, right? And I think it's really important to, when you notice ways to break down the layers of a complex issue like this, to do so, which is why I'm doing it right now in this way.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
and I agree. Yes. And
These are
yeah.
so that's at least 3 different layers of failure states that make things more costly and less likely to have good outcomes.
Yes.
And of course, then more demoralizing at each step. It's demoralizing for doing the things to be more costly. It's demoralizing to have a literal disability at being able to understand what's often called common sense, aka knowing what to do when you do things in all the details and not forgetting any small thing. And then it's even more demoralizing to have as well this disability with actually doing all those things once you theoretically know how to do all those things.
Right, because
Right?
the world is changing in real
Because,
time, so you can't memorize this
right,
skill even abstractly or like theoretically.
right,
So
and then you won't have the working memory to remember it all unless you build systems that can support you with that you basically have to build for yourself, because like the ones that exist now are mostly temporally based, and
Right.
but also exist spatially and visually,
Right.
right? Calendars and stuff, that's visual, spatial, and temporal. And shoot, I was going to say one last thing, but I lost it, so you could go ahead. Is it Tara?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking, like, I know a lot of autistic people rely a lot on routine, which like I do for some parts of my life, but like I have a really hard time planning like details for one-off things. And at that point, like I find it easier to just like roll with things, and I find it easier like relatively in cultures or subcultures where we're not expected to like have everything planned. Like if everyone's, or like a lot of people are caffeine dependent like me, but figure out where to get it on the go. That's easier than like if there's an expectation that we're going to enter a building and not leave for like 8 hours and it's not somewhere I go all the time. Even though it's like more stuff to figure out on the fly, it's like I don't have to do it all at once. I don't have to like pack everything and plan everything. You get what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, there's less new things too in that scenario. And this is where I like the new things, old things, all things, do things. Technically, the do things, it's again, like it's not really a sequence. It's just like, and that's what doing is. So if it's what an autistic person doesn't get to say is like, hey, so I'm already processing too many old things and all things, and this takes way more time, and also I don't have structure supporting me to do this. So if you're going to give me new things right now, my brain is going to make me process it, and maybe I don't want to do that right now. So people will like basically randomly give you important new things to process based on the all things old things, and then you're locked in that, and that's not fair to you because
Oh,
like our society doesn't
and
have the
so
curiosity around that.
actually, I think this explains one type of meltdown, and having trauma around this kind of meltdown happening to you would basically become PDA, it being like a specific kind of a response to people handing you new things when you're already in this process of trying to figure out how things work with what you know about reality so that you can do something, right? And so, like, if I'm in the middle of trying to fix my computer's microphone and my wife comes in and says, honey, I'm burning dinner, please could you come fix it, I will have a meltdown immediately, basically. Like, my regulation just explodes, and I break down for like the rest of the day. Um, but I'm sorry, just trying to highlight, I think, this new things, old things, all things, do things. And then the additional thing you were just saying, Jane, about how people are giving you new things is really explanatory of my lived experience.
Yes, yes. And then my version, and then that explains way more things that like can deviate, not even deviate, but ways that this principle comes to be like an expression of a person's personality or their habits or behaviors, right? So like if I think about like that makes sense to me what you just said, and then
I think it also, just
go ahead.
very quickly, I think it also just makes sense of how autistic people are just like other people as well, and it's changed, right? Compared to that other lady, right? This idea like, oh, we're very different. No, it's just that we are doing more all the time. And so us looking like we're having a normal day and possibly playing a video game, but we're really having a hard time figuring something out. We act like other people act when they're moving couches up and down stairs, or like building
Right.
furniture, or they're in the middle of a tax audit, right? We have the regulation of somebody in the middle of a tax audit every single day, right?
Exactly.
Well, especially those of us that are like self-supporting and have to deal with finances.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly under the current conditions, it's at an extreme.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't, we're not arguing it should be at that extreme. We're saying that until we recognize this is what's going on, we can't do anything to create like the right structure for an autistic person to then organize their lives or create ways of being and doing that will support how they're already thinking. So
and just the idea of what's happening with an autistic person as being somehow aberrant and drastically different than normal people, which is presented in normal therapists and people talking about autism, right? They act as if autism is innately different in this way, where you will freak out a lot and have meltdowns. But like, this way I'm putting it posits this is just normal people meltdowns happening all the time,
right?
Because we are perpetually in a state of life affecting stress.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Right? It's like we are out there with saber tooths again, while everyone else has houses and fire to scare them away, but we don't. And so, of course, we freak out more often.
A slightly unethical, I guess, version of how we could offer a proof for this would be to use this to then design an environment that would be like just as stressful for a neurotypical person and see if they start having meltdowns, which I would argue they will. They might look a little different, but I would argue that, yes, we can probably put somebody into a comparable level of stress. Not exactly, it's not equivalent, this isn't a dichotomy, but if I were to interrupt somebody's doing as arriving with the intensity and with the like totality, like the totalizing effect of what our society does right now to our doing as building, I think I could drive them absolutely bonkers.
And again, it's not just the society, though. Like, it is just existence, because this is stemming from the visual spatial skills.
Yes.
Our very ability to interpret sensory information.
Right.
Yes.
That too.
It's just worth adding, right? Not saying that you said anything wrong, just adding that this can happen to us unless we build for ourselves habitats that are particularly designed to
Yes.
not interrupt us in that way.
Yes.
And then that's where one aspect of us having routines comes in, but specifically around like the objects and the things around us and the places we go and the environments that those places have. They're
Right.
ones that either work well for us with not interrupting us with new things, or that we've mapped extremely well and thus exist in old things well, right? And either way, less of these interruptions of having to figure out how new and old things fit together, and therefore we're going to have to do less of that fitting together simultaneously.
Right. And
I've also,
go ahead. I'll wait.
oh, I was gonna say I also found an option 3, which it might be less ideal for some people. But the like one way that I found to be able to take in more new stuff is like making it piecemeal, which like with, for example, looking at one and then decide whether like I want to do the thing or like put it in my to-do list to go back to it later, or like break it down and put those in the to-do list. And then like I can stop worrying about that thing and I can kind of like close that drawer. And then unless it's like something super tiny, I usually like take a little break for a couple minutes and then move on to the next one, and like do it really piecemeal and just like expect to do it that way. And I kind of have a sense for like at this point, yeah, I guess like the ones that are simple enough where the new information isn't that complex, I kind of have a sense for like not an accurate sense of how long it'll take, but like I can be pretty confident I can get through like 3 or 4 of these things in less than like a half an hour. And then for the ones where it's like wild card, I try to like not do more than 1 or 2 of those in a day, and I try to like find space where I'm not going to be bothered while I do it.
So this is, I think, what's important about what you said too, and I'll get into this. You're controlling how many people can give you new things potentially, right? I'm assuming that has to be part of the strategy, because my argument is that the old things, all things, determines which new things we're going to be stuck processing. So unfortunately for me, like depending on what your special interests are, if I see somebody doing something physically with their body that is anatomically, I know, messed up, it's going to bother me. And because I have the background to do the all things on that and to be like, well, why is that happening? Why is this person moving like that? That's not natural. How did they end up like that? So I'll go on that as one example. And that one isn't even the one that bothers me the most. The one that bothers me the most is I'll show up, like I just did something for a concrete example on like TikTok, and somebody showed up in the comments saying this random ass thing. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, I've already analyzed this. Like, I know what you're doing. And then I have to be like, God damn it, I have to, like, you just made me have to work on this model. That wasn't what I was trying to do. And now I have to tell you have poor reading comprehension because I know what's wrong here, and I'm trying to share it with my species because I'm still pro-social. So we end up having this, like, bossy or like weird sort of not antisocial, but like we end up like pulling away, because if we go near people, they're going to give us this new information that's really like not categorized the way they say it is, and we may have been categorizing it. So this is what I'm saying is like we have to then avoid that. And our society is really against that right now, because number one, they need to sell you products because you're a consumer. So you can't stop intaking that. And number two, everybody's broke. So everybody has to be discovered by each other to crowdsource each other's ability to do anything in society, because we have a income disparity right now, right? So neither of these are good, because now I'm being exposed to a bunch of people who will throw a new thing in my face that my brain's like, shit, I got to work on this now.
And
right,
then,
yeah. I hear
additional
that.
factor that will come into how different autistic people will have capacities for this kind of stuff. will be our working memories and the degree to which we get completely fucked up basically when we're interrupted, right? So like if Tara is more able to be interrupted by someone presenting a new thing or just new things in general happening without losing track of everything and becoming, overwhelmed by inputs than I am, even though we're equally quote unquote autistic, right? Tara might be able to exist in these circumstances more than I am, all based on working memory.
I hear all of that. And yeah, I really resonate with the having to like negotiate partnerships and collabs to like and crowdsourcing to get to places. Yeah, that is really hard for me. It's like when I'm reaching out to people to try and see like, does anyone know such and such? And then a lot of those conversations turn into a negotiation of, can they get me to help them more than they're helping me, or they just want to catch up about 5 different things, or like, yes, I have been thinking a lot about like what kind of boundaries ish, like it's usually more soft boundaries I can put around those things, like say in advance, like, share a couple talking points and ask like, okay, you wanted to talk about that. I'd also like to talk about this. I'm trying this like give and take kind of thing now. Like we'll see how that works. But yeah, I do find like I find myself trying to limit the like situations that I engage in, and I've been doing better now than a year ago, but still not as good as I'd like. With especially advocacy type things, or even just like being out about my autism. It's like the kind of conversations people want to have. Like some of them are great and affirming. Most of them I learn nothing, and it's way more for benefit than mine. and, and yeah, more times than I can handle. Really dysregulating dynamics come up. Like for example, earlier this week, I was trying to tell someone how a doing as arriving ask that they were putting on women to come to a certain space so there could be more women there and then it could become more safe for women is not doable for women who need like a higher level of safety or comfort in certain ways for neurological reasons or for all kinds of reasons. And like I like vaguely used myself as an example, but really like the point was not everyone can do that. And then she was like, I have a suggestion for you. Or like how you could make this work. And like I had to tell her like 3 times, I don't want to hear it because like, yeah, I didn't feel that taking in that new information and then being able to process it well enough to like engage with her about it. I do feel like something that has helped me is I have developed the ability to say, okay, that thing is a special, like related to a special interest in theory, but not, I've been able to, I guess, okay, I used to say, look, in terms of whether it's relevant to my goals, but it's actually more whether it's relevant to my exploration. So like I've like narrowed the scope of my special interests, I guess. So I can say like that thing isn't relevant enough. I'm just gonna like basically ignore the fact that I saw it. But yeah, when I see people causing harm to others, I do feel the need to step in and I overextend myself. But I try to like notice, when is something causing harm versus when is something just a theoretical discussion that I don't care to have. Like she wanted to talk about how I could change myself to be more compatible with her space. And I'm just like, I don't think this discussion is useful for either of us. I don't want to have it. Bye.
Also, so in my framing too, to like extend that a little bit, so let's say the new thing that they put up is part of your episodic memory. I need to learn the terms, but those three aspects of the episodics, right? And then they're like, hey, here's my random idea. And you're like, oh, cool. I've worked on this for, I don't know, since I was 7, at least in some capacity. So that won't work. Like, so on some level, I kind of have to have somebody say, and then they'll think that like you're resisting it. You know what I mean? Like, then there'll be this whole thing of like, oh, why are you so down on my idea? Or like, why don't you like me? Or why are you giving me this interpersonal hierarchical information about how you're better than me? And it's like, well, no, like you just suggested
Right.
something stupid. Thank you for suggesting something stupid. Also, you don't work on that project. I work on that project. Get out of my lane. Like, we weren't even discussing that lane. We were trying to do something else. Why are you bringing up my baby and calling it, ugly for one? But
Yeah,
it's like, and also
I
like
have this
you've never
a
seen it before.
lot when someone try like if I do explain the kind of issues I'm having because of my autism, people will usually try to start offering suggestions, and it's like
Hmm.
this. I've been working on this my whole life,
Yeah.
right? And you are offering me, well, or like I could you could go on other things too, like depression, right? If somebody says go
Mhm.
outside, right? Like I'm ready to have a full freak out now
Yeah.
because like kind of like that's like saying to somebody in a wheelchair, like, have you tried
Mhm.
fucking taking calcium supplements for your bones or whatever,
Or you know
right?
what?
Like,
It's
sure,
even more abstract
Mhm.
than that.
yeah,
They'll say
somebody,
calcium supplements
somebody
for
with
your bones.
polio
Yeah. Go ahead.
take calcium like why don't you take calcium supplements if you have polio,
Right.
right? Because you're like this, you're having a bone issue, and this
Yeah.
this is the thing I know helps bones.
Mm.
It's
And
like my depression is in just chemical depression coming up on its own. It is depression
Mhm.
about the entire state of my life and all these struggles I have to deal with.
yeah.
And yeah,
And then if
I'll just let
I want
other
to
people
add,
go.
because like besides like the calcium for bones, because they've learned that general like truism, then you'll say
Yes.
no, it's more complicated than that. And then they're like, oh, well, just make a hoverboard. You can make a hoverboard, right? Oh, there's man, I can't wait for you to make a hoverboard.
Oh my gosh, this has been my week. Or not, I mean that's an exaggeration, but yeah, I've run into like several little things where yeah, people are so fast to jump to solutioning for others without understanding, and I'm trying to find language to convey to them this is very complex. And like, yeah, like you're saying, Jane, like we've been looking into this for years. It would take me forever to catch you up to a point where you can be helpful. And I don't think you want to, spend a week hearing me talk to get there. And your other option is to trust that I know myself better than you do. Like,
Right.
I would like to find 1 to
Yeah.
2 sentences to say that.
Well, because they've also
Yeah,
just
and actually,
go ahead.
I ran into this issue recently because I started doing a little bit more things, and so I was getting physiotherapy, and I've started like I've unmasked a lot in general since I found out I'm autistic,
Mhm.
and I'm starting to just use the kinds of interactions I use with other autistic people, right? So the physiotherapist, very nice lady, and she'd ask like, "How are you?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm pretty depressed. I'm suffering a lot from
Mm.
economic issues, and there's no
Mm.
coverage for psychologists."
Hmm.
So that's what I've been up to. But anyway, my back's not really feeling any worse. And then she wants to go into like, "Oh, that's so bad. Is there anything I can do to help?"
No.
But there's nothing you can do to help me,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Mhm.
actually really frustrating to have somebody. Well, it's not even that there's nothing, but it's that there's nothing within the purview
Mhm.
of what you're willing to do, and you should know
Yep.
that already,
Yeah.
so that I don't have to tell you,
Yes.
like, and basically ease your emotional distress with the fact that my life is suffering in this way.
Right.
But I have to be like, no, you can't help me. And if I listed a way you could help me, like you could absolutely afford to give me $200 right now, and this would
Hmm.
make my life easier for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's what way you could help me, right?
Right.
But
That's
like, I'm not
crazy
allowed
in
to
our
say
system.
that. Like, I
Yeah.
understand that, but at the same time, this person should, outside of like the social conditioning, actually be willing to do that in theory, right? Like,
Well,
if they
yeah.
happen to be a close friend of mine, they
Mm-hmm.
do that. And if they, like, you know, basically, if they were more like certain philosophers who preach, being more moral or whatever, they would, instead of having that money to give to me, they would be at least giving it to charity already or whatever. But I'm getting too sidetracked.
Okay, so a couple things on that. So here's my new things, old things, all things, new things, right? So this is the problem with somebody doing that behavior. So people's behavior is changing all the
Right.
time because society is changing, right? And they keep insisting they've got it this time, right? They're going to help the crazy neurodiverse people. Okay, great. And then you hear them say that. I'm like, damn it, now I have to analyze why you just said that. And like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's gonna be like, I'm not criticizing you, I'm not trying to make a whole thing out of this, I don't feel hurt, I'm not analyzing you because you hurt my feelings, I need to know why you're acting like this because you're part of the environment that's giving me these problems and you genuinely think you aren't and you keep getting more excited about how you're not, and guess what, you're wrong, and now I have to analyze why you're wrong. Like, not why, but like, how come you're doing this, like, what, and then now I have that, so they just gave me another thing that I need to all things to, like, you
Right.
know what I
And
mean?
actually, just very, very quickly, sorry. It's just that even the people in my city who work at like the intake for psychiatric things, where you do a phone call with them to see if their specific psychiatric unit that's giving free things to people on disability coverage will take you or not.
Mm-hmm.
Even they don't actually know what resources actually do exist
Yes.
for people with different psychiatric issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So even they who like should be the person who most knows, and of course, especially my family doctor doesn't know this. Family doctors really don't know this. They
Right.
don't know what exists to send you to,
Yep.
and they don't know when you're fucked, basically,
Correct.
right?
Exactly.
Which is the answer I would like to have if that's true, right?
Yep.
Like, I would like to be able to call somebody
Mm-hmm.
who knows all the things that do exist for people like me.
Mm-hmm.
And if none exist that I can apply to and get help from, I would love it so much to tell me and just say, no, you cannot get this covered. If you want this covered, you'll have to find a way to privately, right?
Yes. Right. And
But it's like
that's
they
from
want to be
that's
helpful and
bureaucracy
say,
too.
oh, right, bureaucracy too.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
suggest you to all these things where maybe if you get through the bureaucracy, there will
Mm-hmm.
be something at the end, but actually there isn't.
Right.
Right?
Right. And our current solutions suck because there's no way to imagine that, like, the problem is the bureaucracy, even though there's books written on this, but they're still kind of like esoteric, and it's running so much of our current current societal structures that I'm like, hey, your civilization is wrong. You know that, right? Like, I can't pretend it's working. It's not. And then when people go, well, certainly it can't be that bad. I'm like, well, it is. So I don't know what to tell you. So for me, it's like a lot of times that's where I get frustrated, where the solution to autism is something crowdsourcing something,
Mm,
or like something,
right,
and to the extent that I do peer support, that's why I started mutating it to pure motivation
right.
support. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we
Hmm.
spend our time together being able to do more things, and in the way that we actually do things. So that's how this all evolved, because ultimately this is a civil rights issue, and I don't know how else to see it but that. And I don't think you can fix the civil rights of people that cannot access their civil rights sufficiently to have money by having them pay you money. Like, it's not, the math ain't mathing.
Right. And actually, this explains the thing that I didn't have the words for before, of like why I'm so angry at the prospect of hopefully getting an extra $200 a month on my
Hmm.
disability income support and all the people in Ontario's disability income support.
Hmm.
Because, like, sure, it's a great thing. I would love it if that happened, but it doesn't change any of the systematic issues or the lack of access to important health care.
Right.
right? It just means you're this much less likely to become homeless, basically,
Yes,
right?
and it's not enough. Yeah. I mean, if I was okay, so let me, from my experience in my life as an autistic person, if I had, and I live in an expensive city, so I'll allow for that, but everything is bought on the internet anyway, so I don't even think that matters anymore as much as it would otherwise. So how much do I think like an autistic person actually needs to compensate and figure out what we need to do as autistic people and build our skills per month at this point? First, you're going to need a lot to dig yourself out, okay? And I'd probably ballpark that at 10,000 a month for your average autistic person to bail themselves out and build a new system. Then maybe it can go down, okay? Probably it has to be more than 2,000 a month for sure. Like I'll almost say guaranteed, but to bail out probably a year of like or somewhere between half a year to a year of like $10,000 a month, and then this person can build an alternative environment and work on skills long enough and get out of the system as it stands long enough and be able to ignore things and not have to try to fix the system. Because right now I have to fix the entire system. That's my only option. That's the all things that I'm stuck with because I can't get. But if you ask me like, what do I think would, now that sounds crazy, and I don't care at this point. I just don't even care because we need to do construction in our homes. We probably need, some of us might need to move, not all of us. Some of us certainly that's going to have to be in there. Just too many things have to happen that are construction projects that like then you can build the life on top of that. Because right now I'm living in the ruins of some holistic version of the life I'm supposed to have. So how do I tell? Good luck. It's like, how do I communicate that? And then I get a butt hurt because then I remember that I started looking on ChatGPT to make it answer me questions about how the current corporate structure and business structure works. How come all ideas have to be transformed into a company or a corporation? That's weird. And it's all investors. So what do they call them? Venture capitalists, right? I'm like, that's weird. So all the angel investor venture capitalists are just throwing money at the ideas of a bunch of tweedledum dumb fucks who were born in the Hamptons. And I'm like, just give me that money at this point. Like, I have ideas. I have so many ideas, but I don't have that social capital, quote unquote.
It exists, like the thing you're describing, it exists now as a thing, as just a new kind of gambling. Like it exists beyond horse racing or casinos.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it exists with the prestige of being skill-based.
Which it isn't.
If you can gamble correctly on which thing's going to make a bunch of money, then you're a smart economist person who deserves to be a billionaire, like the other smart economist people.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that's weird. And like just having any interfacing with that whatsoever is uncomfortable and strange. And then I have some amount of, I guess, resentment, or not resentment. I don't like the fact that they keep telling themselves that these are the geniuses, these are the idea guys, these are the node people. They're like, oh, these are the people that can new idea, old idea, all idea, do new things, whatever. No, they're not. No, they're not. And so I'm like, well, that's why all your gambles aren't working, is like you're waiting for somebody to get hired by these dipshits who is kind of a nodey type person that they're going to exploit. And then now you have a product, and maybe it shouldn't have been a product.
And then genius now is the stand-in for divine right of kings for the explanation of why it's morally acceptable that luck determines everything about quality of life.
Right, exactly.
Right? It used to be the kings and the nobles are designed by God to be above you, or they have noblesse oblige, and they are better people, better able to fulfill that role, and they're like servants. And both of these kinds of things get brought up now, but instead of God, it's geniusness. Yeah. And they've been ordained by the economy instead of God even. Right? The fact that they are blessed by the economy proves that they are economy whisperers and therefore ought to be in the position of controlling the power of the world and setting our society up. It's very much the same way. It's like, oh, these are God whisperers. They know the right things to do.
Yeah, yes, and that analysis like can continue onwards too, because it's really important. But what's frustrating at all of this is that like let me think about how to put this. So it feels like the ability for me to change the civil rights emergency that I see as being an autistic person is being held hostage by a bunch of guys that used to just get BAs and hang out on the like stock exchange floor and then go home and do a lot of cocaine. I don't like that. That makes me mad. And now the universities are also kind of just a rubber stamp on them. Like they're not any more interesting or intelligent than anyone. Like they really aren't. And I've read these people's writings, and it's not good. It's not impressive. That's certainly accurate to say, but I feel some amount of that's just simply unfair in a way that is grotesque. Like it's not even funny, like so then what do I do with that problem?
As that system of conversational and like mind space exploration roles where there's a captain and like navigator or whatever, I'm going to remind you, Jane, the captain, that we have accidentally moved, or maybe purposefully, but we have gone into the waters of complaining about society. And
Right.
these waters lead down a vortex where
do.
we are wasting our time and energy.
So
maybe you can move back to NOAD, or you could, basically, you're the captain. I suggest you reframe us to different waters.
I can reframe us. Yeah. So
I wanted to hear about the things you've been doing.
Yes. Let's pull back and talk more about the NOAD thing. So NOAD is useful.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Did I just do good?
Yes. No, this is very helpful. Yes. I think I felt that was accurate.
I really have like specifically this is like psychological trauma issues where I really need direct feedback when I try novel social things like that. So I'm learning to just ask for it again.
Yeah. It looks good. Go ahead. I didn't hear the NOAD thing when I joined in, so by all means.
Oh, I will link you to that. Oh, it's right here.
Thank you. So, okay, so popping back into NOAD. Hold on with that. Kyle has a... Just getting a little update on a sequence of events with Kyle. Okay, so NOAD, new things, old things, all things, do things. The other reason to use that structure is it lets us ignore the aspects of what's currently happening around us that like are not solvable, or what I liked what Kyle said the other day was getting back to the principle that Mr. Rogers has, that like I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop anytime, right? And it's not I can stop you when I want to, I can stop you when I wish, I can stop you anytime. It's not that. I know I cannot stop these people. And that sucks. So I'm trying to figure out like what is the minimum that I need to intake about that situation, even though it is part of like why things are not reasonable at all. So it's very frustrating because I don't even think trying to fix it indirectly is a good idea. Like it's kind of up to them to do something different, which isn't looking like it's going to happen, because I think they're generally terrible people. So I don't imagine them changing anytime ever. So I don't. Yeah. So let me back off that for a sec and get back to here's a better, nicer, cooler thing. So what I realized was if you do new thing, old thing, all things, do things, no matter what, you now inhabit your own frame of the world. And it's based on recursive properties because that's the things you'll be attracted to work on as like the all things anything that's a recursive like theme, that you're then able to see the meaning develop over time as these shapes change. So there's like a non-temporal appreciation, even though the temporal factors are also, you know, put into context. But anywho, but you can see like, okay, well, this is behaviors over time. Great. So it lets you embrace the fact that you've already invested so much of your mental abilities into these models based on your special interests. Just keep going, basically. Like it gives you permission. It's not even not care what other people think, because I already think we don't, but it gives you permission to understand what you're doing as extreme. Hello. Oh, is my dog barking too loud? Okay, can you hear me now?
I don't know. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I think my dog was barking, so I think it actually cut me out.
I think you'd also cut out for a time as well.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, okay, let me back up. So new things, old things, all things, new things. So what I think is happening is we're able to make a model that we then work with for the rest of our lives. And that's why we look different, and that's why we act different. And it's really important that we just do that and start to categorize everything that's a negative response to it as I can't stop that. Like, I can't stop them when I want to. Well, I could maybe stop it, but I can't stop it when I want to. I think that's the part that I got from Mr. Rogers. I can't stop them when I want to or when I wish. I can't stop them at any time. So the best thing then is, since I can't stop them when I actually want to, is to not talk to them and to not interact with them and to not care if you know, this leads to them doing another thing I don't want them to do. Because at this point, I just can't care anymore about random neurotypical people. Yeah, just trying to create an issue. I just don't care. I'm gonna have to I'll tell people, look, if you really are bothered by me, and I know you in any capacity that's more personal, like, come up to me. I'll explain new things, old things, all things, do things, and what I'm doing. And if you watch me over time, you'll see I'm not lying to you, and that's what's actually happening. Now leave me alone, if you would, please. And I can't make you, but I want to tell people, I want you to leave me alone. I want you to go away. And then if they say anything about it, it's like, okay, well, I already expressed that, like, what I'd really like is for this person to just stop. Not even to go away, just stop. Stop doing what you're doing. Stop it. It's directed at me, and I'm kind of just over it, because so much shit gets directed at me because I'm autistic, and they're like, why are you doing that? 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 I'm like, well, stop. Just I'm not doing it for people to ask me, why are you doing that? If someone doesn't get it, they need to just keep it pushing, in my opinion. And I guess that's what frustrates me, is like, and that's what I've been thinking about in this time of, like, I'm trying to work on the marriage goals with Kyle, but I need more money. Okay, how do you get more money? Every way to get more money is like convoluted. So that sucks. And, like, maybe I just say, well, I can't do what I want with the money. That's it. I can't make the bad system of money stop. Even though I want to make it, I want it to stop right now. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how to integrate that more fully and build a model of that, even though, like, I think that's a starting place. I just got that yesterday from Kyle. It's just that reminding myself, like, I can stop when I want to. I can stop when I wish, right? I have things I can stop, but I can't stop this other person. Maybe I can in the abstract, right? That's an interesting thing, but I can't stop them when I want to, because that was like 10 years ago.
And this brings to mind something I talked about last time with, like, why can't I just pay somebody to find me a job that would work for me? And something I mentioned a long time ago about Hannah Gatsby, and how her partner, like, she actually ended up marrying her manager, the person who set up and arranged everything about her comedy specials, and, like, moving her around spatially and temporally to do those. And, like, when you're saying, maybe I just have to stop, maybe I have to say I can't fix the economic system, like, maybe what that means is that you have to say, I am disabled at being able to make myself fit into the economic system.
Yes.
And I have to accept and then find a way to get a person who's not disabled at this to be in charge of that for me. Right? It's not saying that you can't do work, but it's saying that you cannot arrange for that work that you do yourself. And that you have to learn to stop trying to do that.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Even though I'm told it's a skill that I need to learn.
Sort of, right. And to accept that reality, right? Because I'm sort of in that situation where I still constantly have, the voice in my head saying that I should be applying for jobs, I should be trying to get a job, as if trying more is going to work.
Right.
Because I know, like, theoretically, I could go through those steps, but I'm not actually capable of doing it. And if I was actually capable of doing it, it would be by doing what you've done for years with music, right? I would be burning myself out anyway.
Yes.
And I would be heading towards a collapse anyway.
Yep.
Even if I did sort of force myself that way.
Yes.
So what I really need is somebody who can see these aspects of reality and talk to me and actually listen to me and what I need, and then find a way in the world for me to do work that makes money, given what they know about the world and what they learn about me from me, right?
That's a really interesting
basically
framing.
Saying that autistic people specifically, as a support need work placement. Right?
Yeah.
They don't need a different kind of support. It's that, like, separate from any economic support, we specifically need the resource of being placed within jobs for us specifically that will work with our capacities.
Right. Well, and even when we are in that job, leveraging beyond where it starts out, like, how do you, like, because
leverage,
again, I don't even know what that means.
Managers within show business do.
Yes, which is why I was attracted to it, man. Like, they just do that for you. Like, ugh.
You don't even do schmoozing, right? Like, actors are famously not socially normal people, not able to, like, make people like them, and are hated on sets and things, because part of the role of the manager is schmoozing for you, is talking to the people who put the money out and do the hiring on your behalf.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yep. And yep. It's so frustrating because I think people know that, and maybe that's part of the language that I've gotten, where people are like, "Oh yeah, you should totally be famous. I could see you being famous."
And Jane, like, we talk about, and in fact, people who do work in the system and make money talk about, like, the way that you can profit from having autistic people working for you. And we always talk about, like, we do genuinely, like, have intent output that could be being put out, and people reaping the benefits from financially if we were just put at the right place.
Right.
So that means that if somebody took up the job of finding places for autistic people to work and taking a 10% or whatever commission, that should then be a new job that's created that will be financially good for the people who take it up, right?
Well, like, and they'd have to alter
we
the.
Need to find, like, entrepreneurs who will step into this space and create this, but it can't be autistic people doing that, probably, or at least it would have to be one with specific special interests.
So, and then that, I think that makes sense. I also think, like, the role would be that of telling not the autistic person, but the management, like, okay, these are the not even accommodation, this is the way that this needs to change. Like, okay, the work normally behaves and acts like this. Okay, well, the autistic person, that's not working yet, so we're going to try this. Okay, that's not working yet. Okay, we're going to try this. And you have to have some amount of, like, trial and error until you get the autistic person up and running at full capacity, and then the autistic person will be hyper productive.
And, like, in language we've used before, we could talk about how you basically need like an administrative go-between, somebody
Yeah.
to translate the administrative tasks into ones that work for the autistic to understand, and also somebody who can talk to administrative people
Yeah.
and juggle, because like bosses are a social class that exist. And so what we call administration, a lot of it is like regulating and assuaging the egos of the boss class in the same way that women have to do for men
Yes, right.
generally.
Yeah, that there's a
Right?
feminist
And so
analysis
autistic
about that
people
too. Yeah.
aren't able to do that
Mhm.
in the same right. So that's
Mhm.
another reason we can't get jobs, is that we can't be doing all the work to turn. Right, well, we could call it masking. Like there's lots of different ways to talk about the issue, but it
Mhm.
should come across what I meant already.
Right. Yeah. 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 And along with that, which I agree with, that's all making complete sense. Like the go between, it basically, like if there's something that I don't need to know about and can just be automated, that I never need to know even happened, great. Like don't make me do something that needs to be automated. And also, once it is automated, like that's an IT problem now and not a me problem, which is way better, right? Where it's like, you know, I if I need to make sure it's working, that better be a pretty simple ass project. Because I'm not going to be aware of it, and if you're trying to get me to be aware of it, it has to be like, it has to work with the job and my own life, and it can't be the thing that burns me out is making sure that the stupid automation didn't break while I wasn't looking at it, because that's not going to work either. So it's like, it's so frustrating. I don't even know what this is, but it's like some sort of admin role that also would invent scalable solutions that other autistic people could then use, but they need to be tested, and you can't then check to see if it's working the way you would check to see if an holistic thing is working. That won't work either. You can't do that. It won't work. So that's a lot to try to explain or understand. I just kind of, damn it, I'm really frustrated, because like, I mean, the end of the day is like, the main problem is like, I have no idea how an autistic person can earn enough money, unless if, again, like they literally were born into a financial situation where failure is impossible. Like a family. They were born into a rich family where failure is somehow made impossible by virtue of their parents.
Right. So like, you were born into a very privileged situation that has resulted with you being able to accumulate a lot of very high level skills,
Yeah.
And like marketable skills, and you are still stuck in this situation where it's not possible for you to be making money, right? And that speaks to a fundamental failure of the entire system that we live under.
You'd have to be.
But it's just, for us as autistic people, all of the failures that already exist are worse, and there's additional issues, right?
I think an autistic person, in order to succeed, would have to be born into the millionaire class in society. Like their parents would have to be multimillionaires, and or any success that they get is very temporary. And I don't know, like the kids, like young people, really young people, like teenagers in early 20s on TikTok, I don't know how that's going to end. Maybe they can get enough of like a nest egg out of it that'll be fine, but outside of that, there's nothing. I just really don't believe it's possible for an autistic person to do this, and with the slight exception is if their special interest is perfectly aligned with their job, such that that's all they're doing. But that's not going to be most people.
I was just checking out Temple Grandin, and it's just her special interest happened to create a thing that she could then go and explain to like someone working at a meat processing place.
Yeah.
And she had to convince them that the thing that would fix a huge problem for them would actually work.
Right, because
But
they
then
didn't believe her, and they even sabotaged it the first time.
Right. And then even with all of that, she's still not like she's not a success in a repeatable way. She is
No.
like a token-based success. So it doesn't even count, I don't think.
Yes, right.
Like,
And
the only reason we know about her is because she exists as a person to know about.
yeah.
Right? Like her success. I don't know if she was really successful outside of how she became famous or doing a thing while being autistic. Right? It's this like miracle story fame situation.
And she's my
like
parents'
the same
generation.
way like a blind person can, right? And she's also from
she's
a
much
generation
older.
where
Yeah.
money, the economy was just easier.
Yes.
Like you just
It hadn't gone downhill yet, and now it's been
Yeah.
on that decline. So
I suppose one other option is that
sorry, we're back in Sad Town, where we're on the precipice of an economic collapse, and as autistics, we're just in a class of people that's going to be suffering as the economic collapse happens.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's not really what we're trying to talk about so much as things that are actually working for you.
Yes.
So other than the node system you came up with, which is a wonderful framework that's allowing us to understand reality better and thus hopefully, exist better. What else did work?
Okay. What have I been doing that works? And also, was there a comment? I think I just want to make sure.
Yeah, sorry. Ro was saying something.
Yeah.
I think I was saying that another possibility would be for you to get lucky and secure some patronage.
Right.
Or
right.
I guess
and
also through some branching out through contracts to get, I guess you could say, an inheritance of sorts. Like one of the ladies in my art group, right? One of my tutors, she wasn't from a nominally wealthy family, but sort of like in some ways through her contracts, like a lady gave them like their farm and stuff like that.
Wow.
I know this isn't exactly a very likely thing.
Then, that's so basically just luck, right? So not really useful avenue for us to pursue, like how that works for them and how we could like do that.
Well, you're right, but at the same time, I suppose it's just another thing you can throw in the wind while you're operating out.
Yeah, it's good to know. I appreciate that.
You didn't say anything wrong. It's adding it in.
Yeah.
One thing I think is really important for us to work on noticing all the time as autistic people is whether when you respond to something, to try to make sure people know if you're contradicting what they just said or if you're simply adding to it. Because the behavior I see in us is that we will go to add something that we think is important to what's being talked about. And the typical understanding for everyone, including autistics, is that if someone acts the way we do, we're contradicting what was just said, right? If somebody says, humans are apes, and then someone else immediately says, humans are a lot like ants, that is read as somehow trying to contradict or undermine the first statement, even though it's not. So, like, I wasn't trying to undermine, like, everything you said, Ro, was true and good. I was just, like, with a comment from before, I tried to reorient the conversation, and I was trying to sort of bring it back
to motivation. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I appreciate that too, because I need to do that too.
That apparently that happened, but I suppose I appreciate that. I guess I must have been oblivious.
Yeah, of course. And that's also fine.
Okay, so motivation, pure motivation sports, do things, all things. What is working? So, let me think for a second. It's like, I mean, okay, here's one aspect. So, I do think I came to a good realization that the all things, so that I need that term memorized, but episodic memory, what was it again? Trajectory, I think. Thank you.
Episodic trajectory. So, our memories of future events that we have created the episodic subjunctory, which is our
Subjunctory.
stored memories of alternative versions
Yes.
of events that we have created.
Yes.
And now exist as part of our episodic memory.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So the like landscape, or I guess interscape of those three categories, trajectory. Damn it! Say it one more time. I'm gonna. It's.
Well, here I'm putting it into chat. Right
Okay, wait. Let me look at this. Let me just read it. Thank you.
just
Hi, plagued by
I just put the words
society.
here, and I could 1 second. I'll grab what I posted earlier, so you could just read it out loud to everybody, because I grabbed the little quotes from the book I was reading, so you could also read that. There.
Okay, subjunctory, projectory, subjunctory. Okay, so this I need to spend more time there is part of it. And that the relationship that I have with objects does go back there, or arrives. It connects to that, right? So that place is where I spend most of my time, and the healthiest place I can be is there a lot. And that if I am there, when I do then go, outside into new perceptions of current situations, I can enjoy them more fully, because they're always situated as the all things, right? So that I'm being told to look at new things, and it's too much, and I need to say no. I need to go to old things.
It's also just like one of the underpinning reasons people will get stuck in anxiety is spending too much time in their episodic trajectory of what will happen. And one of the reasons people get stuck in depression type loops will be spending too much time in your episodic memory, just chasing down things that have happened. Right?
And for
so
me,
instead thinking about ways things could happen could be healthier, right, in the future.
Right. Well, it's I think the whole thing is fine for me. And I think I was actually warned against it prematurely by reading like self-help books as a child. And when really I was just trying to hack my autism, because I realized something was weird. And all of those said the same thing of like, oh, don't live in the past or the future, live in the present, blah, blah, blah. It's so good to live in the present. And I'm like, but that's not the relationship I have to past or counterfactuals. I use those to understand the all things. Old things are all things. New things are all things. Why are you upset, Jane? All things, right?
I would like to clarify something, which is like, and I don't know if this is just part, like maybe this is just part of like projecting and subjunctory memory building or whatever. No, wait, no, it's not. Okay, right. So there's a language thing happening here. So when you are living in not the present of your environment, but the present of what you are creating, you're not living in episodic memory or projectory or subjunctory. These are things you have imagined about the future already, or that you alternatives to what has or could happen that you've already imagined, and you now have memories of those imaginings. You are actively cognifacturing. You are in the present moment building things to examine, right?
Well, and this is what's interesting about it is like this is why I came up. Yes, and I guess this is why I came up with that idea of like, okay, superimposition. So I'm going to do things that are, around me in the environment, and to keep me from having to look at any more of the new information and having to do work on it, I am going to superimpose on top of what's happening something from this episodic trio, right? And it could be my memories from the past. So this is because I need to spend more time with that. I'm never going to build the all things without the old things being fully integrated. And I'm being told by this society, look at the next new thing, look at the next new thing, look at the next new thing. You're not happy because you went after the wrong new thing. Here's a new thing. Your new thing was a bad new thing. Now we have a new thing. And that's driving me insane. So like because of the conditions of my society and the tools, I think what I'm realizing is I was told to categorize what I should be doing, what would work for me, and what does make me healthy and okay, as like somehow being in my own head or detached from reality or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm never going to be detached from reality. I just don't want to work on all of your problems for you because you won't. I don't want to see the things that y'all ain't working on because I'm going to feel resentment.
And to yes and to what you're saying, like there's an idea I brought to you before, Jane, that part of our societal structure is that you have to give up all the things that make you happy and you enjoy as a child,
Yeah.
and take up all these new things as an adult that have been stripped of joy and play, right?
Yeah.
And that to try to do superimposition where you bring back some of that joy into your life is somehow wrong or makes you less than by being childish, right?
Right.
But actually, right, like the idea of bringing play into your life and superimposing it over things you have to do, but you're not able to otherwise, is like clearly extremely healthy, actually, if you think about it for a moment.
Right.
And so,
go ahead.
And that's like you're talking about how that works for you, but like I have issues brushing my teeth, but I don't get to play with like sort of improv, like pretending this or that or whatever. So the moment I superimpose a thing that I find fun to imagine on top of the physical task of brushing my teeth, like no wonder I want to go do that. It's a very simple explanation of why that's fun, because I get to do a fun thing. Right?
Yes, and something you're good
I
at.
had to do an unfun thing that I don't want to do, and that I have past trauma with, even, and all these things. And instead, I just don't think about any of that. I think about a fun thing, and then doing the unfun thing it doesn't matter at all. Right? My brain's engaged on a fun thing already, right? And in fact, that's probably why I call it chuckabooing instead of body doubling, because I don't know what body doubling is. I don't know what people mean when they say that. But chuckabooing is when you have somebody that you like to be on a voice call with or in the space with, and then you get into that voice call or in the same space with them to do things that otherwise doing them would be draining to you and you would disenjoy doing it. And now, while you're chuckabooing, you can do it. Right? It's that same sort of thing. You are just adding a thing for your brain to be happy about and care about and motivated towards, so that you can not notice the fact that you're doing a thing that you're not normally motivated towards, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually such an amazing thing to be able to do. Because again, all the normal attempts, all the ways to get yourself to do these things that I've ever seen are actually about just tricking yourself or forcing yourself or somehow becoming better or like willpowering it through or all these things, right?
Yeah.
But this is like, okay, you don't like doing that. That's okay. Let's just have you not notice you're doing the thing that you don't like to do. And then you'll no longer have the not liking it part exist.
Yeah.
Because it's not, your attention's not there.
And it's permissible to do all thing and then talk about it, right? It's permissible for us while we're doing the thing that's not interesting, that we need to like not take in as new things. It's like, because the new thing is like, this is still here, this is a stupid problem, we should have designed houses differently, right? That's gonna just be very annoying, and I can't stop it being designed wrong right now. I don't have the resources to do that, or power. I get power, I mean influence, I don't know. I can't tell people you're doing it wrong and they'll just snap to it, which whatever. But if
actually,
no,
you're so right. Because again, like using toothbrushing, like I feel that it should be absolutely possible with our understanding of mechanics and engineering and everything to have a machine that brushes our teeth for us.
Correct.
And does it properly.
Yes.
Because one of the many aspects of issues I have with toothbrushing is that it is apparently not possible for a dentist to tell me how to brush my teeth correctly.
Yeah.
Because every time I've tried to learn, it's been different. They've all been saying different things.
Yes.
And it's right. And I'm just not good at doing it anyway. And a big thing has been like this invention of sonic toothbrushes and all these mechanical toothbrushes. And like I can't use those. My dentist, I used one, and when my fillings fell out, and my dentist did that, like, what's wrong with you? This is common sense. You shouldn't be using those.
Right.
As if that somehow was information given to me.
Right, exactly.
And you're right. Like, that is part of the frustration of all these things. Of, like, why does this problem even exist anymore? Why can't we actually solve it somehow?
Yes.
But even if you put your mind into solving it, right, because you notice it could be solved, you wouldn't be able to implement it.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that feels, obviously really shitty. I mean, that's alarming and disturbing. We'll just say it's disturbing. So then, like, okay, a tangential point to that, I guess, that I wanted to make is that I want to be able to, let me put this carefully. I want to be able to tell the world to like piss off, because the things they're telling me are stupid. And that's nice that they're telling me that, because the problem is if I don't, or not the problem, I guess the reason why I think I need to spend more time in my head with the episodic trio is because the alternative is to hear people say, well, maybe your goals aren't defined enough. Maybe your goals, would you like this goal? There's a new goal. There's a new goal. There's a new goal. I'm like, oh, really? Tell me, where did that new goal come from? Oh, you don't know. Oh, goody. You just made me do your work for you again. Now I have to find out why, not only what is the origin of that thing? How did it come to be? Why do you know it? What's up with you? How many of you exist? You know what I mean? Like, now I have to do a whole statistical modeling of society because you just told me, a thing that is stupid, or it's not you, but somebody just told me a thing that is stupid and said, well, the problem is you haven't picked the right the next new stupid goal. And then you'll get people that say, oh, all goals are worthwhile, because you can be like, well, nobody had that goal in 1875, so was everybody miserable? And they'll be like, no, they just followed other arbitrary goals. I'm like, kill me now. like I don't want to do that. I can't. I don't derive satisfaction from that, because there's no global configurational for that to ever have made a lick of sense. So that's why I'm saying, like, I need to know, maybe my version of the present moment, surrounded by my stuff, where I have control over what new things are around me, versus what's currently happening, where, because we live in a consumer culture, whatever, I'm supposed to be a consumer. Everyone's like, new thing, buy thing. And now they're like, I'm the thing to buy. Donate to my Patreon. I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't take this. Like, oh my God. So the current conditions are so that, I guess that's what I'm thinking about more than anything else, is that problem. And I've been kind of like picking people's brains about it at random opportunities. Like, what do y'all think about how people interact? And you'll get variations of like platitudes, or kind of just weird dismissive, like, that's the way things are, do. And I'm like, okay, well, damn it. And then that encourages me once again to have to do in all things for that. That's a new piece of information. So every time that I'm like, hey guys, this looks like a horrible thing, they're like, well, no, it's not. And I'm like, I'm pretty convinced it's a horrible thing. Would you like to see my model that says that this is almost certainly a horrible thing? And they're like, no, because I never model. I just look for another new thing. So, like, trying to make some amount of peace with that, while also knowing, like, how the hell am I going to cope with it? And if I spend too much time looking at it instead of my own episodic landscape, I'm going to get really pissed at everyone, because now I have to solve their own dysfunction, because they're not going to do it, because they keep saying stupid shit. and I don't wanna, like I just don't wanna, and I guess they're not. I guess I don't know what to do with that. Yeah.
Right, which I'm just going to do this thing that I identify. I was talking with Ro Wrightspear about this yesterday as an autistic thing, which is you say a thing and then it makes me think of a thing about myself, and when I say that, which is like everything you're saying just makes me think about how I just basically don't interact with anybody who's not an active part of this Discord server.
Right.
And doesn't have as part of their foundational life situation trying to figure out how to exist as an autistic person.
Right.
And so that is what I've fallen into to deal with a lot of the things that you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is extremely limiting, right? It's not as if I'm suggesting this as a good option, but rather this. And well, I guess this is what has happened based on new things, old things, all things, do things.
Yes.
This is what I am doing based on what I've seen of the world. And that's not going to change until I see some new things, basically.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, so it seems like from my all things that I should attempt to stay connected in the public realm because I may have some abilities that would be useful for like things that should be built, okay? And that being in some form of public realm is a sensible thing to try to maintain. Doing that on my own terms is much more challenging than it ought to be, but that's because of the all things problem of it, which is that people are saying you're having problems because you didn't get this new thing. You're having problems because you didn't get this new thing. You're having problems, and I was like, well, no, like certainly not. And then I'm like, well, okay, well, how does that new thing contribute to the all things? Oh, we don't do all things. We just buy new things. And so I need to somehow not say, screw it, I'm taking all my toys and going home. And I'm trying to figure out how on earth do I do that when I'm going to still have to hear people say that stuff at me. Like, I don't know. I don't currently know what to do. I mean, I guess I could just tell them, like, I have a theory called node, and you just gave me a new thing, and now I have to work on it and stop doing that, please. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jean, but like this is a thing we're saying. I just typed out a thing in chat for the people in chat on the Twitch stream.
Hi, chat.
And it's caused me to miss what you were just talking about.
I was refining a point.
Why I don't read and talk to all the things in chat. So I would love it if you could repeat your point, if that's okay.
Yes, I can. I'm happy to.
And chat's done nothing wrong. This is just a limitation with my capacity, and yeah, this great way to explain it to everybody.
Perfect. Thank you. So just the summary of it that's a little bit neater is I do not know how to stay engaged with the external world that is not part of my current storage of the episodic trio or trinity or whatever, right? It's the stuff outside of that I'm not interacting with. I don't know how to stay in contact with it, which I think I need to do for things to get built that are important, that I may have the capacity to contribute to based on what skills I have and who I am. It seems that it's possible I can actually be helpful. So I have to stay connected to this current environment. But then if I stay connected to the current environment, these are people that are often like unquestionably screaming new things at me, which it gets very difficult to ignore because even the fact of them doing that is part of the all things that I need to analyze. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes, and I think I heard enough of this to know that I really wanted you to repeat it so I could respond to it, because I would pause it immediately and like I could put more work into this theory in the future and reposit it to you again after you've considered it so much. But I think it might be the right move for you to, at bare minimum, say, I'm going to take 2 years where I disconnect from all those things that you were just talking about needing to stay connected to, for the reason of maybe being able to fix things, to grow and stabilize and everything. Because the reason you're staying in contact with things that are making your life harder is so that you could maybe give the world and people good things you can produce. But you
Yes.
don't currently have the capacity to produce any of these things.
Yes.
So you are literally burning fuel to do a thing you can't do, so
Right.
that you have resources to do a thing you can't do,
Right.
in the chance that you ever get put into a position where you get to be the savior of the world. Not like that's hyperbole.
No,
but like
yeah,
do an
I totally get it.
important thing,
Yes.
right? And this is extremely ridiculous behavior if you look at it spelt out this way, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm not attempting to use any language that, makes you feel bad. I notice I use ridiculous behavior, and I'm like, that's not, I don't mean it that
No,
way.
I thank you for saying that, but I do feel it is ridiculous. Like I think it's like the compelled nature of it is not my choice. Like people really are aggressive, right? Like and it's like, god damn, like if people weren't so aggressive about like, here's a new thing, here's a new thing,
and
here's a
I
new
don't
thing.
know the specifics of what you're keeping your attention on, but like, to reframe this, imagine I was still keeping up with Twitch politics because I thought that in the future I would be able to offer a real improvement to the world, when all of a sudden my whole situation is way better, and it will require me to have been paying attention to all this stuff the whole time.
Well, it's
actively harmful.
It's
me,
it's
right?
tricky because I think what I'm referring to is like, it's all of the current affairs or current events or whatever, all of it, and all the people saying like, oh, you're immoral if you do this, you're immoral if you do that, you're immoral if you do that.
Right.
All of it. And then I'm like, well, no, and if you say to somebody, this is what I see that as almost a game. I've kind of saying, I'll say this point and then I'll kind of drop it. You can fill in the blank about what catastrophic thing we're supposed to take a public stand against, since we're all public figures now, apparently. I'm like, okay, well, all right, humans can't handle having weapons. Nobody? No one's lining up for that? Oh, okay. Well, I win the game, number one, and number two, I'm right. Number two, I'm fucking right. So I get really pissed off at the whole thing. I'm like, you all are going to do nothing. You're all hypocrites. And so I don't want to hear from that either. And but actually, then I have to analyze it.
Knows you, as somebody who actually knows you, I would point out, like, Jane, and you know that you can entrench what you are saying there in feminism.
Yes, I can.
Women have already done this work. This is the work. Read it, right, or whatever.
Yep.
Right? So this is even more reason you don't need to be looking into this. These issues are actually already solved in theory.
Yes.
What it is that you don't have the power to make them actually solving, right? And like, I am aware that atrocities are happening in between Israel and Palestine. But that's just because I can't not be aware of it, because I watch YouTube sometimes.
Oh, you can just
it's not on any social media, but I can't. Right?
It's everywhere.
I don't talk to you, and I'm not on social media, but I watch YouTube sometimes, so I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
But this idea of like keeping up and having to like, there's no reason for me to know about these atrocities, because I do not have any ability to change what's going on there, right? Like, keeping touch of what you should be donating towards and voting for is fine if you have extra money that you're being charitable with and you're updating where you're putting it. But if you're not doing that, you don't need to keep up. If you're not capable of doing that, you especially don't need to keep up. And having the right position about these things as they're happening doesn't matter unless you can change what is happening somehow.
Yes.
Right? And additionally, Jane, like, all this stuff that's happening if you stop paying attention for 10 or 20 years, you become an ultimate hermit, and then you come back, it's not going to take you long to get caught up,
Right.
as if you had been paying attention the whole time. Right? That's another reason you don't need to be following it like this, right? Because you are able to build these patterns and understand these things the way that you can, the same way I was able to go into Twitch politics, knowing nothing about something, and then just from the facts the people making bad points were putting on the table and basic logic, point out why none of that made sense, and they should be doing a whole different thing that no one even thought to mention, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be keeping up on this. And Tara had some, and I'm going to try to speak a little
less. No, you're good. Yeah, so I really resonate with all of that support, and yeah, it can be really tough, like feeling like we need to follow everything that's happening, especially when we're kind of baited with like, oh, you have a little bit of a presence now. This person liked your stuff. This person signaled like they might want to chat sometime, and then like ghosted. But then what I see, and like, that's exhausting. But then I see these people who come out of nowhere with an idea that they've already created by, talking in spaces like this, where people want to listen and not refute like they know way more than they do. And, where people want to like share points that they've actually thought through. Like people who first spend their time in spaces like this, there's no, like, we don't need to be in the fighting for attention spaces when we have spaces like this. At least for me, like the only reason I engage in spaces right now during my learning phase, before I have some completed thing that I can throw at those people's thing and watch it fall apart. And that's like, I don't know, if they're not willing to engage in let's build a new thing, that might be, the only way to engage with them might be able to compete with their thing and like prove that my thing's better. But for that, I need to have a more built thing. And in the meantime, like, I want to find people who are doing as building to talk through that with, which you found your group here. And like, I've seen people who've gone into that competitive world with a semi-built thing already, or like yours is already built, but like, if I see it as signal, if you're going out into the world, and like I'm running into this too, and running into more refuting, running into more, I might believe in you someday, you seem like you have potential, but I don't want to support you today, but I do want to tell you how this game works so you can stick around. When I run into that, I'm seeing that as signal of, I need to find maybe a couple people who believe in me right now, who I can just hermit with and not have to care about anyone who I want to talk building with, and they tell me that they only succeeded because they managed to build as arriving. Or maybe they'll help me do as building someday if I figure more of it out on my own. Like when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, all right, I'll talk to you in a year then.
And
just very quickly, I wanted to say, because I realized, like, Jane, this framework is like, you're forgetting the fact that you are building right now already. Like this NOAD thing that you've come up with is the important thing that you are building that can help the world be better. And like you need to get rid of distractions from the good work you're currently doing.
Right.
Be able to produce more of that.
It's interesting is that, so here's, I'm going to give you an all things from what I'm looking at, and I think I needed maybe to look at it up to this point to start to be able to say, okay, I've analyzed it enough. I don't think new information is going to change the current trajectory or dynamic or what's happening. Okay, so what I'm seeing and interacting with, and like I'm being intentionally vague because it's so ubiquitous that I can give specific examples, but I think like it more proves my point if I just say this and you try to apply it and see that like, oh my God, you can apply this all the time. So, okay, so what I think is happening is people are telling me that it's very important for me to learn some specific new piece of information to prove that I deserve to build things, because people who respond to this new information in this new way are the new good people, right? And you need to be part of the new good people. But I am rejecting that entire claim. And then I'm also saying, okay, well, what's your project? Like, what's the project of the new good people? Being new good people, of course. I'm like, wait, what? Like, what? Describe the project. Well, they'll be new and good. You see, they'll be good because they're new. You know how old is bad? Well, these are new and they're good. So they can't describe a project, and they can't make any claims about the project.
So, like, Jane, you described that, like, you see people trying to do this, and then you have to go and figure out what are they doing and why are they doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, but what it is that they're doing that same thing again. They're just doing the new good people. When you see to do that, like that, all you need to do people, that's an old thing, not a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then go back to what you actually want to do.
Yes, and it was challenging. It has been challenging. Maybe I'm good now. I hope so. It's been challenging because this is a group of people who insist that this isn't what you've seen before. This time we're totally different, and like look, this time our hair is a different haircut. This time, like
right. So
God.
And actually, no, I can speak to this too, Jane. So Black Lives Matter, people actually in the streets doing things, that was a different thing. But the part of Black Lives Matter that was people who didn't go out, just talking about it on the internet, wasn't a new thing. That was just another new good people thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so unless people are actually doing things, if they're just saying words, then it's nothing, right?
Right. Well, and they make it sound hard. Because it's a doing as arriving thing, right? And I think that's helpful, that framing.
It's also the white people privilege thing of like even acknowledging that there's problems other people are having seems like hard work,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, and this isn't even actually learning about it or how to do anything about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The act of recognizing racism is happening counts as hard, important work to these extremely segregated white people, of which I'm that kind of person, right? Like, I'm not saying anything bad about them, but they are so segregated that noticing racism exists, noticing that a genocide is happening is work, right?
That's so insane.
Is spend 10 years or whatever learning about anti-fascism or anti-racism and what people who have been working on these projects are doing and helping them. But there's a complicated issue with democracy there. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I lost my connection for a second. So would you mind summarizing? Okay, let me see. I don't like when the wording, because they could drive people away who are likely to be easily converted to more effective movements once they learn a little. So here's the thing about learn a little. Okay, so this is what I think, and this is let me give you a quick summary of my argument of why we have a bit of a problem here. So knowing about something that people are calling a genocide is not actually hard anymore, like at all. Like, it's really not hard to know that that's happening. Like, so if anyone's like patting themselves on the back for managing to do that, they should stop, because it's really, really easy. Additionally, unless you are a sociopath or something, it is incredibly easy to care about people being murdered. Like, it's like stupid levels of easy. And finally, I don't know why you would need graphic images to convince yourself that that's bad. And it says something a little disturbing if you're like, no, but the graphic images helped me to care about a child being dead. That's really weird, because I think that's people who do as arrive so much that they've atrophied their doing as building, like the episodic trio that we've been talking about with like memory and being able to make counterfactuals and such and so forth, like you should be able to imagine it pretty vividly. And if you're having a hard time imagining it vividly, like maybe you don't know enough about the human body to know what it looks like when something's mutilated, but like maybe that's a problem for you. Maybe you don't know enough about your own body to make decisions about what's okay for you. Like so the ignorance is weird to me because I don't think that is a difficult hurdle to get past. Now that we're past that, now that we accept that that's actually really, really easy and stops congratulating everybody for it, that's stupid. Okay, so what's the project? Okay, the project is we're going to fix it with GoFundMe, which, all right. Okay, all right, so GoFundMe is a revolution. All in on GoFundMe. Is that what we're doing? We're all in on Go. What's the revolution? What's the plan? There's not a plan? There's not a plan. Okay, so excellent. So how is this ever going to end?
So, and that's another really hard thing is like for people to accept the degree to which they are disempowered and disenfranchised.
Yes.
And to accept that as part of reality and then make plans based on that. So they exist in this world. Like a lot of people, like so many of these people, exist for someone who, like me, it's certainly not. I'm not going to be able to do anything to change that situation. And so many of these people are drastically overestimating the import of what they are doing.
Yes. And not even just the import, but like how does this work in a broader project? Like okay, I'm not saying they have to get it right. I'm not saying that, but I'd like a prediction of like, okay, well, how is this going to impact things, and how is it impacting things, and why are you doing it this way? What is the value of this approach? Oh, you're just doing it because everyone who doesn't do it is stupid. Okay, that's real. Okay, all right. You want to sit down and argue why that is? Oh, it's stupid to ask. Okay, this is going to end. Great. And then I go back to like, okay, well, how do you feel about shooting people in the face? How do you feel about weapons? Oh, they're cool. Okay, well, fuck this.
Right. And this goes back to doing is building, because like the actual thing to do is to build an understanding of reality, right?
Yeah.
To go out and say things like, okay, we're saying that it's important to have people know that this is happening, and so we're spending resources to spread that. Let's go look at things like breast cancer awareness and those campaigns and look at the efficacy that came out from that.
Yes.
And how that's comparable to this situation, and then what we could predict as an outcome, right? Which isn't done. People just take the assumptions that these things are going to work based off being told that they are, which is all wrapped up into this idea of the attention economy. Right?
Well, breast cancer is a fascinating thing to bring up, because so here's a thought experiment or an attempt to like construct and determine what the project is, right? So breast cancer, do I think if people could use cancer as a weapon that they could attack people with, that they would? Yes, absolutely. If it was as easy to use as guns, we'd have a weaponized cancer problem. So I was like, okay, so solve that problem. There's the problem. There's a hypothetical. Like if anybody thinks that isn't true, I'd have a long conversation with them, being like that I do not make that prediction whatsoever. So I'm like, okay, so my argument is, okay, humans are not able in our current iteration of society, and probably any society that we could iterate upon, to handle having access to weapons. Okay, so what are you going to do about that? You're saying that we need access to weapons. Okay, all right. So yeah. So I mean, I'll keep going back to this.
Get off this again, because I was just going to say, like, this specific thing about like the violence in Israel and Palestine. Like, part of it is that humans cannot handle the system of property laws in countries that exist.
Yes, that too. Right.
That needs to be changed.
Yeah,
and
that
like,
needs. Yeah.
And then it's like, well, and then it's like we're talking about restructuring all of society.
Right.
And so what you actually need to be doing shouldn't exactly be focused on this one conflict in the way it is.
It shouldn't be.
Right? It should
at
be
all.
like, here's this one conflict. Join us in the worldwide union to fix the planet.
Right.
Right.
And
as part of that, we can work to fix this situation.
Right.
But in general, we need to fix everything.
And what it becomes is a distraction of like, well, we have to take care of this first. We have to put band-aids because this is hemorrhaging. I'm like, okay. And there's also something hemorrhaging in about 4 other places. Right. So we're gonna fix, okay, and then then another one's gonna happen, then another one's so you'll never say like, right. I believe my project will fix this, right? You'll never say that. You'll just say, well, we won't come up with a project until we fix right. the band-aid.
And right, and like in fact, the reason this particular one is the one we have our attention on always comes down to like the privileges and structures built out of European colonialism. Right.
And Judeo-Christianity. Well, I mean, actually, no. All 3 branches of Abrahamic religions. All 3 branches are involved.
Specifically, yeah, it's specifically being paid attention to because Europeans moved their European Jews to this place, and so they have a vested interest in it continuing. Right. It's all it actually colonialism again instilled. Right. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it is, but well, bouncing off this, but like there's
because I was arguing why we shouldn't be putting our attention to things like this,
right?
Because we already know all we need to know about like these things are bad, these are fascisms, having weapons and ideology in countries and the economics the way it is leads to fascism and genocides and violence.
Yes.
We need to get rid of all those things.
Right. And then,
I was just going to say, yes, Jane, you should pay less attention to that.
Because it's But yeah, and I guess I'm trying to think about this. So I live in an environment where skill building is obfuscated in its importance constantly. So people are rewarded for doing as arriving, which is not skill building. It's arriving at a trophy. The trophy is set by other people who arrived at a trophy, who arrived at a trophy, who arrived at a trophy, none of which had to do with skill. Most of which had to do with like, atrocious levels of abuse. And now that we're there, it's all bullshit, but people so deeply want it not to be bullshit. So then getting back to what I think autistic people need to do is like, how do you interact with any of that at all when you're going to have people coming at you being like, you're a bad person, like you're a scapegoat bad person, because look at me, I'm going closer to this stupid goal, this stupid trophy that won't get any of the things that I say it is, but I'm telling you that it's making it better, that I'm going towards this trophy. I'm like, what skill are you using? No skill at all.
My point is, if there's a place you are going that is causing you to be interrupted by these people, and there's no way for you to not get interrupted by them, you need to stop going to that place.
Right.
The thing they are doing is a thing they shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. You cannot control them and make it stop.
Right.
Unless you have that power. Like if the website somehow, or Discord. Like I'm on Discord. People can't just contact me and say these things about me. So here I do have the power to keep them away, so I could come here. But if there are places where you can't keep them away, and you can't tell them to go away, you don't go there, right?
Mm-hmm. And the there is, this is what's interesting. So I look at it, right? I'm not really there in the sense that I think a doing as arriving person might, sure. But I'm perceiving it. So there's things there to perceive, but I'm wondering, like, maybe just saying like, okay, these are people looking for new destinations, like new arriving goals or new goals, really, basically, instead of new goals, as my framework. It's just so frustrating. It's like,
so how many things have you become aware of while looking at these places in the past while that you're really very glad you became aware of?
Well, that's the thing, is like, I kind of am glad because I need to model the situation. So in some ways, yes, I'm glad, but I'd rather watch it like a human zoo, if that makes sense, than have to be in the zoo. And the zoo animal, I'm not trying to call human zoo animals, but like, you know what I mean? Like the penguins are trying to jump on my head. Actually. Yeah.
So instead of saying, like I was trying to say, like, this is a don't go here place, But instead, you can say, okay, this is a place where I have to make sure I only go at scheduled intervals with the right, like you're set yourself up in the right context to go there
Right.
for it not to interrupt you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is the human zoo thing you only go to when it's time to go to the human zoo.
Right.
And because the zoo we're talking about is so ubiquitous, you need to like find the way to step back largely and only spend small amounts of times, the right times looking into it.
Right.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I can call. Yeah, I think honestly, yeah, it does. We're almost done with stream 2, so I appreciate like where you landed with that and when we got there. Yeah, no, do you feel like is zoo okay? Like, is that suitable? It's not the most flattering, but
observatory is
more
flattering, right?
Yeah. It is kind
like
of a zoo though, because it's
behavior,
artificial. You know what I mean? I'm not going out into the woods.
Well, it's not a zoo. You're looking into the anthill. Like this is the wild of these humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like sometimes you need to observe them, but you need to stop living where every wall of your house is observing them because it interrupts you doing things in your house.
Right.
Because they are because I see why you're saying zoo or circus. So we'll go back to Great Gatsby. You need to stop living with your windows pointed at Great Gatsby's party.
Right.
Right? Because it is going to distract you. It is designed to cause people to come into it. Right? Like these algorithms go beyond the actual algorithm.
It's designed to make people
cultural behavior.
What's so tricky, and this is I hope I'm not like flattering myself too much, but the distinction that I want to make, it's not designed to rope me in, because I'm looking at it in horror, right?
No.
But what it's designed is for the people in it to try to talk to me, and I'm like, oh my God.
I want to say, so part of how it is designed is to rope people in by provoking horror in them, right? That actually is big parts of the designs, right? Especially the people whose careers are being online Republican, whatever they call these things. Like they intentionally do things that will horrify their political rivals to waste their time and energy and destroy their narratives and their work of building, so that they spend time reacting instead of building. And this is actually a huge problem politically in the United States, and part of why the Republicans are able to have the wins that they do and destroy lives the way they do, is that people have learned how to do horrific atrocities in a way that somehow doesn't talk about the atrocities and fixing them, but is about like arguing, yes, that's an atrocity, right? Like that's what it is.
Right.
Like, yes, that's horrible has become the conversation instead of the conversation of let's stop these things or these other things.
Right. Or yeah, like what is generating the horrible thing?
Women need to continue controlling their bodies, and we need to extend the rights for abortion. It became all these things about being horrible to trans people, right? So that now everyone's busy talking about trans people and their experience, and the Republicans can take away all the abortion rights because there's not enough attention, right? It's politics and the attention economy are linked conceptually.
Right.
Does that all make sense, what I was saying?
Yes, it does. And
I do want to just clarify, like, I have no training. I've never gone to school. Like, I'm not speaking from an authority position. I'm just saying things that I think are true, since we're on stream and everything.
Yeah. No, I think that, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. you know what I should see it as? It's kind of closer to, did you ever read the book Lord of the Flies?
Yes.
So it looks like Lord of the Flies to me.
Yes. And so part of it is like, you don't have any of the normal horror of the situation, but the horror of like Lord of the Flies is happening.
Yeah.
People are being tortured. I should learn what's going wrong here so I could hopefully help somehow.
Yes. Right. Okay. All right.
But you're not in a position to help. Yeah.
Right. And yeah. Okay. All right. I guess that's stream. Thank you for helping me to process that. It's useful because some of my theories are trying to say, well, as opposed to doing this, let's do this, and the as opposed to is so extremely intrusive and everywhere and unquestionably like in a place of, I guess it's a norm or something already. I'm like,
And again, to like situate things through the lens of my experience, as it's just the way that I work as a human, like I am doing less building in my life than I could be because I'm not getting as many of these conversations like this as I used to.
Right. So we should do more of this.
So
yeah. Okay.
we should be doing more of this. You were just talking about like my theories are about how we should be not doing that and doing this. Like, let's do more of the.
Let's just do yeah. Proof of it is in doing it. Okay, that works. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna sign off and get some things done that are of a semi-social nature. And thank you. Okay, I'm gonna end the stream now, which was very quiet in terms of viewers, but who cares? Because who cares? Okay. All right. Bye.